So, what is going on YouTube? The Viper versus the Code. The grand finals of Deathmatch World Cup 4 is the exact same matchup as Deathmatch World Cup 3 last summer. The prize pool is $10,000. In Deathmatch World Cup 3, Viper actually won a best of 9 in a 5-0 fashion against the Code. Code, however, has had a very good tournament over here. This is going to be a best of 11. So we will jump into the first game in 30 seconds. Viper versus the Code. Code actually played the losers bracket finals today, but he had about 3 hours to take his rest or do some more practicing if he wants to. Whereas Viper, this is going to be the first set he plays today, so we will see if he's a little rustier than normal. Code has had a very big down moment in the tournament where he lost 4-0 to Brew in the winners bracket, but then redeemed himself in the losers bracket, whereas Viper is the only unbeaten player in the tournament. Viper, I'm not sure, Viper is not starting with any handicap. That's actually extremely important. In Deathmatch World Cup 3, there was a handicap. So the player that came from the winners bracket actually got 1 game advantage in the grand finals. That's not going to be a case this time. So 0-0 start. What basically is the advantage of Viper is that he doesn't have to play the losers bracket finals today, so he can come into this set fresh and well rested, as we'll have the Snake on the right side in blue, and left side will be the Code in red. This is Arabia Hans Mirror, as traditional as it gets, and the Viper snipes a Will here in the beginning of the game, and another one! What a start for the Viper! 2 Wills killed, he lost 1 himself, but he's the one that gets up the market first. This is an excellent start for Viper. 10 out of 10 so far. Being able to snap 2 Wills, only losing 1. And when Code played against Rage in the losers bracket finals, Code had some issues with losing villagers. So that's something that he's gonna have to fix for this setup, because Viper is devastating with his early cavalry. In the winners bracket finals that Viper played against Rage, he 5-0'd Rage very fast. Part of that came from the fact that he was just so good at sniping villas at the beginning. Right now it's 2-2 when it comes to villager kills, but Viper moves in, and that's going to be 1 more dead Will at minimum. Other side, Code is unable to find some more Wills. Viper with the quick walls will be able to keep his Wills alive, although there goes 1. Viper picks off 2 more Wills for a total of 5. And for now, it seems like we have 4 stables and probably 4 ranges. Actually, a lot more ranges are planned here by Code. But the problem that Code is having right now is that he doesn't really have a huge archer production right now. Compared to Viper, Viper doesn't have any either. Stone walls are allowed in the tournament, but you cannot make bombard towers, for example. But stone walls, yes, are allowed overall. So right now, it looks like both players will be heavy on the Paladin and Halberdier frontline and not really going for the Cav Archers. Viper ends the initial stage of the game with 9 villager kills. The other side is gonna have 8. Both players losing quite a lot of villas at the beginning. Viper yoinks another one. So basically, it's a dead even game start after all. Now Viper picks off another Will, so make it 10. And now Viper, I guess he will try to secure this hill in the middle, because that's gonna be the crucial hill to hold. Cav Archers slowly increasing in numbers here for Viper, as we have 7 on the field for the Code, 5 for the Viper. He's actually able to take this hill here, and he seems to have the Halberdier numbers advantage. And early on, if you have the Hub number advantage when your opponent doesn't have the Cav Archers yet, you can actually take some very cost-efficient engagements, and that's exactly what Viper is doing. Keep in mind that Viper actually used the market to sell resources, so he's gonna be able to sustain this level of aggression for an extended amount of time, though his gold bank is already out. That's because he's got 42 Cav Archers queued up in comparison to his opponent only having 11 in queue. So Viper's Cav Archer numbers will be able to prevail in the long run. Now, one thing to add with Code is that he is actually very good at defending early and then counter-attacking and establishing map control. I did mention this when I was casting the Rage versus Code set, that Viper and Code are very similar in playstyle. Both of them are Very good at defending, but can play super aggressive as well. Very good at establishing map control and focusing on the relics, which is not something that either of these players has picked up just yet. But now Viper pushing up with siege rams, pushing up with paladins, and the halberdiers can close the distance to the cav archers, only to be able to slaughter them from a close distance. And only 15 cav archers for Code is not something I really like for him, and probably he doesn't like that situation either. Code is at 65 population, and the Viper's aggression seems to be dominant over here, because as things stand, look at this, Viper is also sending a couple of Tarkans to pick off some villagers to prevent the opponent's expansion economically. Nice snipes over there. Viper establishing castle on the southern part of the map already, as Code wants to knock this castle down with his own siege rams, but the army numbers are a lot better for Viper. Viper already with 2 town centers, adding a couple more. Code still hasn't finished more than 3 town centers. He has the town center advantage, but the army numbers are disturbingly low right now for the Code. And given the fact that this gold mine is exposed here, this could be tough for Code to come back from. His primary gold is safe, which helps quite a bit, but it's 10 on gold versus 0 on gold for Viper though. Viper is only making buildings. He's not even adding villas on gold right now, so he wants to play a little longer game here. It seems cav archers with the hill advantage firing down here is gonna be nice, but the meat shield was a bit mispositioned for the time being. This castle is gonna go up for Viper though, and Viper is doing the exact same thing that Code did to the opponents that he faced in the losers bracket. Be able to counterattack and pick up the relics. Code knows that Viper's got this. Probably just looked at his population and said, look, I have 79 population. Viper has pop cap. Insane start from Viper. And this is where we have to talk about the fact that Viper has been the only unbeaten player in the tournament. And he barely lost any games. I don't think that he lost more than 2 games against anyone. I'll have to double check the brackets for that. But Viper in the winner's bracket 3-0'd Bacti, 4-1 versus Favorite, 4-0 versus Nilly, 4-1 versus Frost, and then 5-0 versus Rage. Viper lost 2 games only in the entire tournament. And now we can actually take a look at the whole map of the Code, and this is where I'll have to highlight that the Code loves to play Golden Swamp. And one thing to consider in this case is that Viper is also very good at the Golden Swamp. So this is one of those matchups where it might be your best home map, but it might be the opponent's best home map as well. And that could result in significant problems for both players. Alright. Don't you think there are quite... What? Don't you think there are quite some auto match in the last patch? The reason why this is happening, like why you have so many auto matches, is because all of these are Xbox Game Pass players. And Xbox Game Pass sometimes doesn't update your game, or you can actually do that, I think. It's interesting that we have so many, indeed, but most of these, as you see, are Xbox players. I wonder how long they have to wait to get matched, though. But basically, this is something that Tristan told me, that basically on Xbox Game Pass, you can actually opt out of the automatic updates for your game, and then it won't update it. And that's why you are stuck on the older patch and you're playing auto match. They're not actually Xbox players, it's Xbox Game Pass. You could ask, why do you have the game on Xbox Game Pass and not, you know, Steam, where most people have it? It's pretty simple. Xbox Game Pass, you don't have to buy the game, you just have to have an Xbox Game Pass subscription. And it's something like, I don't know, $7, $8 or something, and it gives you access to a huge amount of games. In fact, I have one myself, because I'm not using Xbox Game Pass for DE, I have the Steam version, but one thing that it gives you, especially if you're like a casual player, so you don't really want to buy the game, you can just get the Xbox Game Pass subscription and you will have like a huge amount of games. I think Game Pass just started to include Bethesda games, so like games like Fallout series and stuff like that, some very, very renowned. I think Elder Scrolls is also available in Game Pass. Some EA games have also been made available. So there's a pretty decent value in Xbox Game Pass. That's why some people have the Xbox Game Pass version of AoE 2 as well. And we got Mario Ivan. Thank you so much for the new sub. Welcome. I appreciate it a lot. So we will go into game number 2 over here when the players are ready. This will be the Code's home map, and he selects 2 civilizations to play with. Viper chooses one of them and Code will receive the other. It looks like Viper chose Japanese here, so I wonder what the other civilization was that was offered. Tatars, and it's Arabia. So on Arabia, I actually prefer Tatars by a massive margin, so I wonder why Viper chose Japanese. I am in a bit of a shock. So the thing is that if you do Japanese here, you will severely lack mobility. Halberdiers will be scary to fight against, that's for sure. Japanese cav archers would normally be a thing, but not against Tatars that have better pierce armor. So it's gonna be Japanese halberdiers. Traps will be nice. I just don't know how Japanese will match up against the mobility advantage of Tatars. I feel like Chic cav archer is not something that Japanese have an answer for. So I'm really curious what the game plan is for Viper here, because I just don't see how Japanese will be able to win this. And it's Viper that chose Japanese out of the two, and I feel like this time he actually chose the worst civilization. Japanese photon men? Photon men are cool, but not viable in tournaments because that's a cheat code unit. Yeah, Yasama Towers is actually nice indeed. Yasama Towers could be part of the equation, but still, like, the big problem with Japanese is that they don't even have +4 defense on their cavalry. So, really, it's not like you send a couple of cavaliers to snipe vills either. And to me, it feels like Viper wants to play very defensive. And that is always concerning in DM. Because if you just go for full defensive game mode or gameplay, then you will have 0 chance of killing vills from the opponent. So the only way you do not fall behind is if you don't lose vills yourself. And I feel like it's impossible to avoid losing vills. I have some bad feelings about this one. I am not sure what happened. It could be... There is no restarts in DM. So, here's the deal. The countdown ended at 30 seconds, which means that the game is pretty much dead. Maybe Viper misclicked his Civ selection? Because Japanese makes little sense. Maybe it just misclicked. There is no restarts in DM, that's for sure. So, maybe, or the alternative is that one of the players dropped. But I don't really know. It seems like we're gonna have to wait a couple more moments. Don't see that screen. This might be the easiest win of Code here. But it looks like they will have to do some sort of resetting over here. Oh, they messed up the map. They didn't want to go Arabia, they want to go Acropolis. That explains a lot. And Japanese is a lot more viable on Acropolis, if you think about it. Because on Acropolis, it's not as open as it is on Arabia. That changes a lot of things. Because in comparison to Arabia, you have to spread out your base quite nicely on... and you have to control the neutral resources, have to be able to defend multiple castles on key hills. Whereas in Acropolis, it's more about securing that middle lake with the double gold mines on it. Obviously, that's not everything, and mobility could still be a factor, but mobility is a smaller factor on Acropolis Deathmatch than it is on Arabia Deathmatch. So we will jump into the next game over here. Viper, 1 game advantage over the Code, as we will have left side For Tatars in red, right side will be Japanese for Viper in blue. Villager snipes will be luxury for Japanese here. This light cav is just awful. +4 defense even missing, which means that like a single cav archer deals with that very easily. But that Code will open with a heavy camo in case Viper still goes for the cavalry play. And a lot of ranges are being dropped. I don't think that cav archers will be viable here for Japanese, but Viper thinks otherwise. Interesting. It is actually a very interesting decision here, because Japanese cav archers in DM are actually very nice, they're fully upgraded, but they're not as good as Tatar cav archers. Tatars have 1 extra pierce armor. On the bright side of things, it's not that bad. I mean, 1 extra pierce armor matters, but it's not going to be a decisive advantage. Still, I think Camo, Cav Archer, Kashyyyk seems like a better composition than Viper's Halberdier Cav Archer play. So, market coming in here for Viper. Code actually gets the market up a lot faster, and that is going to hurt really badly for Viper because he's gonna have to work out with bad market prices. So, I just don't like this position for Viper at all, and these cav archers are so tanky that they can just dive in and snipe whales from Viper. Viper is barely able to move out of his base. Tatars will also have the heal advantage in the long run. That's going to be a nice one to have. And this is what I was referring to. You can ignore the opponent's cav archers and just run past them and pick off some whales. That's 1, that's 2, and Code has an excellent start in this one. So now we're gonna have some more cav archers on the way here for Code, and this is what I was referring to, and this is why I'm puzzled by Viper's decision with Japanese. Because I feel like Tatars are still way better in every possible aspect of DM on such a fairly open map. Because Viper still needs to do a lot to protect his early wheels here. He's going for defensive cast and he's going for Samurai. What on the earth is Viper thinking about? I've learned in my 2 years of casting that I should never doubt Viper, but I'm gonna admit I have no idea what he's thinking here. Right now he's down by 4 wheels. He managed to pick off 1 though, that's a nice find for him. Code dropping monasteries early on, so he wants to go for some more relics. And now this is a nice one for Viper. This is a beautiful one, although he leaves 1 wheel there saying, as now the cleanup is gonna happen. He actually ends up with 4 villager KD, so he actually salvaged something out of this game, which is obviously extremely important at this stage. But on the other hand, oh my goodness, if Viper wins this, I don't know what to say. Because why do I have a feeling that despite the fact that Viper actually has had to work with worse market prices, I feel like Viper is actually taking over. I mean, now he could be controlling the bottom parts of the map, and when he starts to be able to drop some Yasama towers, suddenly that's gonna be hard to push. And one thing that Code doesn't have is map control. He's barely expanding his base to the southern part of the map. Viper is actually going very military heavy, by the way, only 2 TCs, not adding any additional ones. How Samurais compare with Kashyyks? Samurais destroy Kashyyyk. Like, absolutely annihilate them. The good thing with Kashyyyk though is that they are actually a little bit more versatile. They can be used as a raiding unit. They can be used as, like you see, this Samurai is just eating that Kashyyyk. It might, like, Samurai might even be better against Kashyyyk than Halberdiers are. So, the thing is that Kashyyyk are a lot more general purpose though. They're able to absorb arrow fire, they are able to raid more, so Kashyyyk can always run away from Samurai, but when they engage in close combat, they just die. 70 cav archers versus 91 for a Viper. There is siege rams added, there is Kashyyks to soak up arrow fire. I just feel like Viper doesn't have the unit composition to play this. Like, he can still potentially win this one if his execution is way better, but this has to be a pure execution win. If he wins it though, then it's going to look very grim for Code, because Code has a massive, enormous, overwhelming civ advantage here. Especially with the siege ram now soaking up arrow fire. 87 CA versus only 60 though. Viper once again overwhelming his opponent here with army. Obviously he's not expanding his eco as aggressively as Code does, and Code already picked up 4 relics, so I think Code's position should still be better. Viper now deciding to sell some resources. And indeed, Viper has to do damage with one big push here. But being honest, Code's army isn't impressing me by that much. So like, it's Cav Archers, sure, but it's not like he's not outnumbered. And Viper is melting those TCs. And I feel like Viper's traps here with Karaparuto might be able to accomplish a lot. As Code tries to dive in, snipe the wheels on the castle. I think the castle... Viper with the doubt castle. Viper stopped at 98% with his castle age. But still, the siege workshops go down, which means no more onagers on the field for the Code. And now Viper sets up the Karaparuto traps to shell that other castle over there. Still, 82 Cav Archers versus only 47. How is it possible that Code is this low on gold when he was the one using the market that much? This is crazy. This is crazy, man. And I feel like, I'm not gonna lie, if Viper wins this, I have absolutely no idea for how Code can actually win this set. Because this should be a massive advantage for Code, yet he's still unable to capitalize on it. Now tries to dive into the Kashyyyk to snipe the trap. That's a nice one overall to have. And keep in mind, Tatars have the hill advantage here. So this is not a fight that Viper ever wants to take. He would be behind in the quality of Cav Archers anyways, but the hill advantage is huge. Viper, this is an all-in from Viper here. This is an all-in. He knows that he is going to die if he plays a long game here, both in terms of unit composition and both in terms of just, you know, the position he's in this game. But he's got 4 traps with Karaparuto, and if these castles go down, Viper will take even ground against those Cav Archers. Onagers are also in here. Viper, oh my goodness, this is crazy, man. This is absolutely crazy. He doesn't care. He's pushing up against the hill, against Tatars. 28 Cav Archers remaining for the Code, 65 for Viper. In Deathmatch World Cup 3, he 5-0'd Code. And I feel like if this tendency continues, Viper might win another undefeated set. Viper is... he completely ignores eco. He's just going all in. Honestly, it would be better if he just queued a couple of wheels because... like, he needs some extra gold income. He's at 11 wheels, but his army is just overrunning his opponent. I'm speechless. I'm speechless. Obviously, the Onagers did quite a lot of work, but the way that Viper... I think Viper just sold all his resources, like all his food. He was like, okay, I do not need wheels, because if you look at this, the Code actually has still a huge amount of food in the bank. So, the thing is that Code at this point is going to be able to get some more wheels out, but it doesn't matter, right? That just doesn't matter. Now the traps are shelling the base of Code here, as you got still quite a lot of space to fall back to for Code, because one thing to consider is that Viper has no resources to rebuild that army. So if Code grinds it down, especially if he takes down the siege weapons, then oh, that could be big. Viper keeps the siege weapons alive. Viper still has a lot of place to kill though. That's the thing, that Code always has some space to fall back to. Viper ejects the relics from that monastery as well, and now he's setting up the traps to start taking out the town centers. Viper is at 8 wheels. Viper is at 8 wheels. Oh my goodness. He's completely out of resources, so if this push stalls out, then Code is going to win this. But is this push going to stall out? Viper still has a huge army, and in comparison, Code does not. And you can see Viper is taking down houses. Viper is actually taking down houses here, which means that Code could get housed as well. And now Viper comes in here with a couple of skirmishers. He still is at 8 wheels. He's not doing anything, which I think is a mistake right now. He should try, like, even if he doesn't succeed with this game and just loses it, he should try at least queuing some wheels. Because his push actually could be enough to even the game out, had he added some wheels. Okay, now Viper is queuing wheels, so he starts to feel the blood in the water, and Code is also out of gold. That's the big thing here. Because where is Code getting his gold from? He would have gotten that from there, and Look at this. There's barely any gold here for Code that he's taking. He's at 85 vills, but 48 of them are idle. Oh my goodness. This is crazy. Code is amassing one big army to clean this one up, but is this gonna be enough? 10 Cav Archers, 21 Kashyyyk against still 36 Cav Archers, some Halberdiers, and I think it might be enough for the Code, but like, Viper has to do everything to clean that army up. If whoever wins this fight wins the game, basically. Halberdier is now jumping on the Kashyyyk. That's so good for Viper. He's annihilating those Kashyyyk. And now the Halberdiers will just keep chasing them. Viper is completely out of resources. And he's just melting those production buildings to limit the opponent's ability to just produce skirms here. Kashyyyk trying to dive in on the traps. Halberdiers are now gone. But Code taps out. And the Viper, the Code Breaker. Holy smokes, what a game. This is the definition of an all-in. That is just sick. Massive civ advantage for Code, massive positional advantage, and then Viper just does Viper things and just wins the game. Oh man. Yeah, this is actually probably heartbreaking for Code. This is the scariest thing right now for Code. Because, number one, this was Code's home map. Number two, Code had a civ advantage. Number three, Code had a way better start than Viper, yet he still lost. And now we're going to Viper's home map. So, this is something that can really cripple the morale of a player. Yeah, Viper just pretty much turned this into a joke. Indeed. He's like, this is the type of win that you don't believe if you don't see it yourself. And Viper just wants to go back to Arabia. Viper is also known to be very, very smart with his civilization choices. And that means that this civ matchup could be something that's hard to figure out for the Code. Who is the Code? Code is the best Deathmatch exclusive player out there, most likely. So, he doesn't play a random map, but he is an insanely good deathmatch player. So, he might be the second best deathmatch player overall. The reason why I said that he's the best deathmatch exclusive player is because he doesn't play anything else. Viper is not a deathmatch exclusive player. Viper is playing random map as well. So that's why Viper is the reigning champion of Deathmatch World Cup 3, and Code is the second place, so the runner-up in here. If he's insanely good, what is Viper? Beastly. Like, Viper in this DM tournament has been absolutely crazy. So, like, you haven't seen how Code annihilated Rage, for example. So, Code is an insanely strong deathmatch player out there. And, to be honest, the main problem for Code is that he does the exact same things in a game like Viper. So, Code is a very similar player to Viper overall. The way that he establishes map presence, the way he focuses on relics, the way he's able to get some small raids in to slow down the economical expansion of the opponent, he is a very similar player to Viper. The problem is that Viper is doing everything that he does, just slightly better. And we will have Vietnamese versus Khmer here. This is an interesting civ matchup. Vietnamese will have bombard cannon, and they will also have elephants. But Khmer have scorpions, and scorpions will eat elephants. Vietnamese bombard cannons could destroy scorpions though, so this is something that could go either way. I wouldn't say this is a civ advantage to either side. It's gonna be elephant, Rattan Archer from the Vietnamese player, elephant, scorpion most likely from Viper. The civs are not random. The way that it works is that the player that is selecting the home map offers 2 civs to the opponent. So this time Viper offers Vietnamese and Khmer to the opponent. And Code chooses one of those. He chose Vietnamese, and the other civ is given to Viper. So Viper says Khmer and Vietnamese, and Code can choose which of those 2 he wants. That's how we get there. This is the only 2 games. So game number 2 and 3 are the only ones where you do not have mirror civilizations. Everything else is mirror civ. Capture age. Oh, okay. So, welcome to game number 4, or game number 3 over here. We'll have code on the right side as red Vietnamese. Left side is going to be Viper in blue Khmer. Vietnamese also do not have Blast Furnace and do not have Hussar available. And Viper can just jump into any house if he wants. One of the reasons why Khmer can be so useful at protecting your early villas is because you can jump into houses, and this way there is no way you can kill those villagers. Overall, Viper is going to be the first one to get the market up this time, so he's going to be the one floating a lot of gold. Viper coming in with already 1 villager kill. He's the only player with a vill kill right now in this game. So I would say that Viper's elephants are still slightly better overall, because they're faster, they have tusk swords, they have weaker HP overall, but the extra attack compensates for that very nicely. An early castle coming in here for code, for some Rattan archers. Only 1 villager was killed in this entire game. Elephant numbers at 19 versus 11, as it looks like code will also be mixing a couple of halberdiers, and he places an elephant on top of this hill to prevent the castle from being dropped there. Viper could lose a vill here if he is not paying attention, and it looks like he won't. That's a bit of a sloppy move from Viper, because that was an easy villager wasted. But here comes the power of Khmer heavy scorpions, and halberdiers and elephants will both be absolutely annihilated by scorpions, so you will need bombard cannons here for a Vietnamese player. The Khmer should be better because of the scorpions, but Vietnamese have bombard cannons against that. So it's a matter of how many bombard cannons do you see from the Vietnamese player. As Code actually wants a castle on this hill himself, I believe bombard cannons will be coming in from these siege workshops. Viper, look at that map establishing. He's going to get a defensive castle on this secondary gold, he's gonna get one on this neutral gold, and he's progressing towards the other neutral gold as well. Viper is establishing map presence here very nicely. I like that decision because he knows that his opponent has a slow army. So when both players have a slow army, the fighting occurs in the middle, and that allows Viper to just sneakily get some castles up on key resources, as the Code will be able to finish this castle in all certainty. Bombard cannons on the way for Code to try and take down the Scorpions, but the Scorpions are doing quite a lot of downhills damage over here against the Elephants. Elephants trying to close the distance, but I feel like Viper Scorpions are already being massed in quite significant quantities. And he's losing quite a lot of those expensive elephants. Viper withdraws for the time being until reinforcements arrive. Bombard cannons are out, but Viper dives in for a bombard cannon. That was huge. That was huge. Viper dives in for a bombard cannon, and there is once again no bombard cannon that can kill those Scorpions. And I feel like this is everything but cost efficient for Code. Remember, Viper was the one using the market, so he's gonna have more gold to play with this one. And considering that he's taking a lot better fight over here, his elephants and his scorpions are just annihilating the forces of the Code here, and immediately when the bombard cannons pop out, Viper sends in some elephants to deal with them. This could be a 3-0 here. This could be a 3-0 because right now Viper has significant map control, and Code is just going to simply run out of gold here at this pace. Like, the last bits of elephants are coming out right now for him, and I don't see any more bombard cannons either, or at least just a couple of them, and without gold you don't have bombard cannons. Viper pushes up with the siege ram, and the siege ram could also take down the bombard cannon. This is looking really rough for the Code. This is crazy. Like, Viper is an absolute beast in DM. As if this castle goes down, this is gonna make life even worse for the Code, and I think this castle is going down. Rattan archers are nice, but I mean, Scorpions, especially in this huge quantities, will just still melt them. So now Viper is adding Hussar, which will be extremely good to deal with some villagers from Code. And look at Viper's eco expansion. That's their thing. Viper already at 47 vills to 28 for Code only. In every possible way, Viper is leading this game, I believe. Army numbers are better for Code, but he doesn't have siege to back it up, and he doesn't have anything to deal with those Scorpions as things stand. And as I said, Viper is already going to establish a mining camp on the neutral gold mines. Code actually selling a huge amount of stone so he can get some more gold for himself. He is feeling the blood in the water, but these are engagements that he can't afford to take. Look at this. So many elephants just going down for absolutely zero value. These are type of fights that are just not good enough for Code. He's going to go full Rat and Archer, but I mean, Siege Ram is still pretty decent in that regard. And all of those elephants get cleaned up. Viper's at 69 eco, nice. 35 on gold is the bigger deal though. 35 on gold as opposed to 3. Now Code is gonna be able to rebuild that castle, but it's already under attack by Trebs. Viper's gonna have a hard time protecting those Trebs against bombard cannons, though that's a positive for Code over here. But I feel like Viper is just assembling a next wave of elephants, something that the Code won't have an answer for. Indeed, here come the elephants and the Hussar as well. Hussar will try to dive in and snipe the bombard cannons, so will the siege rams do. And there goes one of the bombard cannons. Rat and Archers lining up nicely for the Scorpions here. And look at the Halberdiers just absolutely annihilated by the Scorpions. Still, Code is holding this hill, but I feel like Viper is just establishing a lot more map presence. So, as I said, Viper actually plays just like Code, just better. Because, as things stand, Code will do the exact same thing. Defend and go for relics. Look at Viper. Viper already picked up 4 relics behind this one. Even if he isn't able to finish off his opponent right now, he has overwhelming majority of the map under his control with both neutral gold mines. He's got 4 relics, so Code is gonna be on a timer constantly to finish this game. Miss-microing his bombard cannons, loses 2 of them to the castle fire, but he takes down 1 Trab in exchange. Viper has... Holy smokes, that's Viper with the 5th relic. Viper with the 5th relic here as well. That is just brutal. 5 relics alone is so much that it can already give you a nice advantage right now, let alone in late game when Code starts running out of gold. And Viper, I mean, Code is already going to start running out of gold in the next 5 minutes or so, because Viper has both neutral gold mines, but Code might not even wait until he runs out of gold, because currently he still has limited answer to what Viper is doing to him. Shortest finals record? No, shortest finals record I think was either Viper versus Hera Hidden Cup 3 or Viper versus Code Deathmatch World Cup 3. I think that, yeah, Deathmatch World Cup 3 finals is still the shortest finals ever, I think. So, another castle goes down over here for the Code, and the good thing here for Viper is that he doesn't have to do anything from now on. He just needs to wait until his opponent runs out of gold, because he's got all the gold under his control. He just needs to play a very, very defensive game over here, and that would be 3-0. The deathmatch games are usually mirrors, but not in game number 2 and 3. So that's the only difference where there is no mirrors. Starting the next game, we will actually have mirrors. This is sort of a kamikaze push over here with the Rams, because Viper knows there is onagers over there, but the entire concept is that he just wants to destroy another castle. And Khmer Scorpions have 9 range over, I think, those onagers only having 8. No, they actually have 9 as well. They have siege engineers available, so those are even ranges. But look at those elephants just lining up over there for the Scorpions to annihilate them. That is just absolutely brutal. And Viper is now trapping down TCs. He doesn't have a huge army, but he's very resiliently pushing, and he's preserving his Scorpion numbers. That's the most important thing. Preserving your Scorpion numbers is just extremely important. As I'm saying that, he almost ate a big onager shot there, but he's taking on the siege workshops, so Code can't even go for onagers or bombard cannons. And now the traps will be set up on this hill to start shelling this TC, and Code's gold mine is wide open now for raiding. So now Code won't be able to access gold either, despite the fact that he's got the will count for this. He will just not have gold income. So Trebs already shelling the castle, or the TCs over here. This is actually a nice move from Code, and a little bit sloppy from Viper, allowing those Scorpions to be pushed by the elephants, but he still has a decent amount of Scorpions, and as things stand, it's double the army for Viper, and the army quality is way better as well. Elephants, Scorpions versus Elephant, and Rat and Archer is just way better for the Scorpion player. There's also random Ballista Elephants somewhere that Viper has. In fact, he's got 2 Ballista Elephants, but I haven't seen them anywhere. Oh, here it is. The famous and well-renowned Ballista Elephant raid, as Viper takes game number 3 over here. this series has started about 45 minutes ago, I would say. And now we're at 3-0. Luckily, it's an 11, best of 11. So, worst case scenario is that we are at the halftime, but potentially the code will have to, or will be able to win some games. Like, it would be a disappointment, I think, both for the viewers, both for the casters, if Viper just annihilated the code in a 6-0, because then there is no point hosting deathmatch tournaments because Viper is just winning everything, right? So, like, even Deathmatch World Cup 3, he stomped everyone. So far, he's stomping everyone in Deathmatch World Cup 4. So, as things stand, this is a rematch of Deathmatch World Cup 3, and so far the result is very, very similar. Viper unbeaten so far in this one. And now we are going to the home map of the code once again. This is a must win. This is a must win for the code. It's his own home map. It's his mirror sieve selection. From this point on, is it actually his home map? Wait a second. Nope. They actually changed the order for the best of 11. Home maps will come in game number 7 and 6. This is now will be Mongo's Serengeti mirrors. But I feel like Serengeti is a map that favors Viper so much once again. I've only seen one game from the winners bracket finals where Viper 5-0'd Rage. And Serengeti was that last game and Viper annihilated Rage there. So if I was Code, I would be scared. And as I said, this is a must win. You don't want to be down 4 games, that's for sure. So we're going to Serengeti Mongol mirrors. This is one of those places where sniping some early wheels could really matter because getting those castles up early is going to be extremely important. So you will open with heavy camos most likely to try and snipe some wheels, but eventually you will transition to Mangadai, and if you can snipe a couple of wheels at the beginning, then the transition to Mangadai can actually be delayed by a significant margin. That's the concept behind this one. So, we will jump into game number... How much? Game number 4, right? In this one, Viper versus the Code. Code needs some sort of momentum. I just don't know what kind of momentum he needs. Because the thing is that he had the massive sieve advantage on Acropolis and he wasn't able to win. And I just don't see the win condition for him right now. Because Viper seems to be doing the exact same thing as Code, just better. The only way that I can see Code succeed as things stand is if either Viper actually starts falling behind in terms of gameplay, so he starts to get tired, or the alternative is that if Code can consistently get villager snipes early on while preserving his own wills, which is way easier said than done, but the idea here is that you need to have some sort of massive advantage for the Code. Like, 2 or 3 wills advantage might be sufficient, but you need to have that consistently for the Code, otherwise that's going to be, as I said, insufficient to play. So we will have game number 4 over here, Serengeti Mongol mirrors. Game number 5 would be Kuman mirrors on Arabia. So that's the next one. And we will jump into the next game over here. We're going to have Viper on the left side in blue as Mongols, and right side will be also Mongols for Code in red. We can say it's Code red right now for him because this is a must-win scenario. He doesn't want to fall behind 4 games. Going for an early market strategy. Viper this time not going for a market, instead opening with stables for heavy camos as expected, and then dropping the castles early on. As I said, early wheel kills could be extremely important here because delaying that castle could be so important, and Viper picks off the first wheel of the game. These are the situations that Code cannot get into, because if he's forced to play from like a behind position, that's going to be even worse for him. He needs to be ahead and then just close out the games. But once again, he's going to be one wheel behind, and that's an awful start for him, given the circumstances. Viper's gonna keep a couple of camos back at home, and look at Viper's base placement. He's making some stone walls to prevent those wheels from getting sniped, while Code did go for a market strategy, and Code is playing this one very strangely. He's selling stone. With Mongo, selling stone is always risky, but the idea, as Code finds the first villager kill of the game, is that you probably want to go a little bit more heavy on the camos and play a much more aggressive game. Code loses another villager over here thanks to Viper, and Viper might find some more. Oh boy, this is another one that goes down for Code. Free one is the Will KD, and Code is just unable to find any villagers to kill here. Viper's base layout is just so good. This is looking really good once again for Viper. It's not done just yet, but I feel like even in an even game, it's going to be hard for Code, but when you are behind by 2 wheels, it's crazy. And as I said, in this setup, the camos are so vulnerable to arrow fire. They don't even have +4 defense. So whoever loses more wheels will have the castles up later, and will just get overrun by Mangadai, I believe. Because now the Code is gonna have a bunch of camos that will get destroyed by Mangadai, and you see that the Code is nowhere close to finishing his first castle even. Whereas Viper already has 2 castles up, immediately queuing up the Mangadai. And that 2 villager advantage also allows him to drop some siege workshops for some additional siege weaponry. Viper doesn't mind trading off his camos against the opponent's one in here, as the camo numbers are slightly more convincing for our red player. And when I saw this stone being sold for Code, it was, I think, somewhat obvious that we will see a little bit more camo heavy focus compared to Mangadai heavy focus, but still Mangadai is the power unit in the Mongol mirror. So right now, as you see, once the Mangadai hit the field, suddenly those camos start evaporating for Code. A romantic positioning of castles on the southern part of the map, but oh my goodness, once again, as if Viper knew exactly that this is a place where Code wants to castle at. He brings in the Mangadai to protect his wheels, but he should just snipe that other wheel, but he's not noticing apparently. He could lose quite a lot of Mangadai here. That's a little sloppy from Viper. He's probably looking elsewhere. Tries to quick wall that wheel in, but that's not gonna happen. The best thing he can do is dive in and snipe that other wheel, so that his opponent's castle is also delayed, bringing in the camos. Right now, more camos are on the field for Code, and Viper is out of gold. But the Mangadai numbers are a lot more convincing for Viper. In fact, there is barely any Mangadais on the field for the Code. I was just distracted for a moment, sorry for that. Today I've been receiving a bunch of text messages that are wishing happy birthday to me, because I think this phone number belonged to someone else back then. And apparently some people still believe that I'm a different person, so I'm being wished happy birthday every 5 minutes today. So that's why I got distracted for a moment. I don't have a birthday today, so... It's the previous owner of this phone number, because, well, companies give out phone numbers for... Like, basically they recycle phone numbers. Yeah, honestly, I should just reply where to send the... That's a good one. I should just reply to the text messages and tell them where to send the gifts. How about that? I could just say, oh, thank you. Make sure that you send my gift to this and this address, because, why not? I can also appreciate Steam gift cards and stuff like that. Alright, so back to the game. Villager count advantage for Viper over here, and once again this castle goes up, whereas Code's castle does not. Code is out of army. This is what I was referring to. When you go for a camo heavy approach, you have to win the game before your opponent gets to Mangadai, because the Mangadai will annihilate the camos. So it is possible to play Mongols without going for heavy Mangadai focus, but in that case you have to go for fast siege ram and camo and destroy the opponent before he actually gets to good Mangadai numbers. But this is what I was referring to when I said that Code is in trouble for losing wills, because he's gonna get delayed building his castles, which guarantees that he falls behind in Mangadai numbers. He's gonna have to compensate with camos, but camos die to Mangadai so easily. So Now we're gonna have more and more Hussar mixed in here by the Code, but that feels a little bit like a desperation move. 10 villagers advantage right now for the Viper. Viper, by the way, is already on 2 relics, and he's picking up relic number 3. Relic number 4 is basically guaranteed for him, and I think relic number 5 is something that he can pick up. Viper is playing without basically any mistake, I have to say. He's even paying attention to small details like garrisoning his Mangudai into the castle in an effort to heal them up. This is really crystal clean gameplay from Viper. Oh, Code has 2 relics. True. Sorry for that. Like, I automatically assumed Viper is the one going crazy on the relics. Still, Viper is gonna have the majority relic control, I believe. Code has actually focused quite a bit on relics, I like that, because he wants to play a long game. The problem is that Viper is gonna be very happy to play a long game here, because on Serengeti, map control is very important, and now here come the Drill Rams and Drill Siege Onagers, and that's not something that Code has right now. So, if these Siege Workshops go down, Code won't be able to get his Onagers out. He is just now getting the first one as Viper brings in the Onagers. Code! Oh my goodness, Code, that could be the end for him. All the Mangudais that he has had are now going down. 23 Mangudais versus 31, so the numbers are still relatively even, but I feel like these are type of fights that he can't afford to take overall. And Viper, just having 1 Hussar on this golden stone mine, denying the town center there as well. Viper is everywhere. Like, wherever I look on the map, Viper is impacting the game with something. May it be 1 Hussar denying a town center or a couple of Hussars raiding the farming eco. He's just constantly pushing and just not letting up. Not letting his team or opponent breathe here. Onager now missing the shot here for the Code. Viper snaps it down. I have to say that it's actually extremely hard to micro the Mangudai against Siege Onagers, because this is fast game speed. It's faster than normal random map games are, so it's really easy to just look away for a split second and lose your Mangudai like that, but we're talking about double the army for Viper, and now he's sending Hussar in to kill the gold miners, and this is where it is just going to snowball out of control. So, with that, we're gonna have the castle already under fire by the Viper, and I just don't know how Code can actually break out of this one. Because the thing is that Viper has majority map control, as I said. Code still has his chances, but look at Viper. He's even healing his Mangudai with a couple of monks on the field. Now it's 3 relics as opposed to 2. And Mongol mirrors live and die with castles. So, if the castles go down for Code, it's game over, because he will just get overrun by Mangudais. So, he can't afford to lose castles. Currently, he's going to lose 1 and he will be down to 4. Viper's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 castles. Remember, Code sold stone as well. So, what that means is that he's not gonna have a very, very easy time rebuilding these town centers, or not even town centers, but more importantly castles, especially with both of his stone mines being on the front. Code cannot mine stone, so he can't actually repair his castles without buying stone here, and he wants to loop around here, I believe, with the Mangudai and force 1 decisive engagement, because he understands that this might be his last chance of saving his base. Oh yeah, indeed, it's 8 castles for Viper. I just counted on the minimap, but you were right. You can actually see the castle numbers over here for Viper. It's 8. For Code, it is currently 5, more like 4.5, because one of these castles is about to go down. I think Code will try to dive in the Mangudai and snipe the Trabs, but that's gonna be awfully hard. Viper reacts in time, and another castle falls for our red player. Simultaneously on the north, Viper actually launches an attack with Hussar and Siege Rams to contest this gold mine. Viper is just all across the map. And really, wherever you look, Viper is just dominating the game. This is just brutal. So now it looks like the Hussar will try to loop around and hit the Onagers. Viper, beautiful ground attack there as well. He's just doing... I'm trying to be, you know, objective here, but really, I don't see any mistakes for Viper being made. Like, he's playing crystal clean here. Like, when was the last time where Viper actually made serious mistakes? Like, he lost a couple of villas through, so he wasn't 100% clear, but really, I think game number 2 might have been the only place where Viper made some mistakes, with maybe the biggest mistake of Viper so far, I think, was the Civ selection in game number 2. But execution-wise, he's not making mistakes, and now he's getting some onager shots on top of those Mangadai. Nice hits overall. That pushes Code down to 26 Mangadai as opposed to 55. And he's got 3 relics in here. He has secured the northern part of the map now. Raids come in as well. It's 80 army versus 20. 10,000 army value versus 2,000. And with that, Viper wins game number 4 as well. Deja vu feeling starts to kick in for me here. Deathmatch World Cup 3, Viper actually won that 5-0 against the Code. Now he's 4 games up in a best of 11, so he needs to win 2 more. But one of that at least is going to be his home map and his Civ selection, so that's something to point out. And I just feel like at this point, it doesn't matter what Civs they are playing, because even with Civ disadvantage, Viper wins. In mirrors, Viper wins. I just don't know what Code can do here. And indeed, this Viper is just praising the soldiers returning from the battlefield. Bless Lord Doubt, the snake is up by 4 games. That's what that monk is actually saying. Okay, so now we will get ready for game number 5, which will be humans on Arabia. That's an interesting matchup because it's actually villager snipe heavy. It's pretty villager snipe heavy overall because you don't have heavy camos. So it's probably still Paladin play. Like Paladin, Halberdier, and then eventually Kipchak, Ram, Onager is going to be the direction of that. But I think any villager snipe heavy game actually favors Viper nowadays because he seems to come out of those situations a lot better. As the countdown, I feel like some of these games are actually shorter than the countdown. The longest part of the finals is actually waiting for the games to start. So Kuman mirrors. I said this before the Serengeti game. I'm going to say it again. It's a must-win for Code. Especially because if Viper wins this, it's a match point. He would be up 5-0 match point, and when there's the pressure of the match point, then it's going to be even harder for him to perform. Because it's always going to be in his eyes and in his mind that, look, if I lose this, I'm out. So, 1 minute away from... Oh yeah, the score. The score is 4-0 right now. The reason why I don't see it is because I'm just showing this screen, so you guys know why we're waiting. We're waiting for countdown. Or no Mesosys played on DM. They are sometimes played, but not willingly picked, because they don't give you massive advantages. Incas can be picked sometimes. Incas is actually a very good civilization for beginner deathmatch players, because you get 10 population space with houses, so you get housed much harder. Incas have very stanky villagers, so it's hard to kill them. Incas have slingers, and that means that the initial egos that are meant to kill villagers are killed easily. So Incas is one of the slowest escalating deathmatch lineups, or deathmatch mirrors, and that is actually very beginner friendly. I have not seen that much Aztecs and Mayan mirrors overall. The problem with Mayans is that ideally you want to have plumed archers, but that takes so much time to get to. So, like, I think Meso civs are only viable in mirror matchups in DM, because otherwise the lack of, like, a complete lack of cavalry is a serious handicap. Like, think about it this way: if you have paladins and the opponent goes eagles, you can just defend with paladins and send the paladins to the base of the opponent. And the Viper, oh my goodness. It's a Kuman start. It looks like we'll have Step Lancer opening for the Code, as Viper snipes one villager from his opponent. Make it no more. One will down to start the David. And as a positive side, Code is able to retaliate. Code actually picks off a will as well. So why is Step Lancers better? Code actually finds a second will kill here in this game. And what is this? A pause. A pause in a deathmatch. Not something that we have seen for a long time. This guy's actually dead. Like, the death animation of this villager just started, that's why I can't actually select it, and you see that that guy is now dead. This is a way better start now for Code. This is the type of start that he wishes to have, and I'm not sure what happened here to Viper, because he's down by 3 wills, but now he's coming back and he's coming in to snipe wills. And, oh my goodness, villager count once again evening out. I'm not sure if Step Lancers train faster than Paladins, but what Step Lancers allow you is to poke down villagers easier because you have extra range on those Lancers. So that's why Step Lancers can be viable here. They can even hit you over quick walls. And right now Viper is at 3 wills, Code is at 2. Viper goes down to 2 wills as well. Both players at a super low will count. I did mention this when Code actually played Rage, that the problem for Code in that set was that he was killing a lot of wills from the opponent, but he lost some of his own as well. And this would have been an excellent game for Code, were he, or had he not lost this many villagers. And oh yeah, the Kumans actually have the step husbandry training time for the Step Lancers. It's absolutely true. And now you see Viper getting housed because he lost so many wills that he doesn't have the capacity to build houses. This is the moment of truth for Code, because he's got the better Step Lancer numbers, and from this point on, it's all about sending in some more Step Lancers to pick off the wills, and Code is doing that quite nicely. So I have to say that this is... I said this, I think, 1 million times overall. But this is now a must-win for Code. He's now having... Code also has 2 wills only. Both players just lose all their villagers. No one is able to build up an army because every villager goes down here. Code still has the better army numbers though, compared to Viper, which gives him a bit of a leverage here. Still just 2 and 3 wills for the 2 players, which means that both of them will get housed eventually, because the production is going to be much greater than the pace of them building houses. 13 and 13 are the will kills, as Viper loops around a couple of Step Lancers. Now, Code is the one that's actually assaulting Viper's base really relentlessly here, but you gotta be careful, because Viper is just holding back here, defending and intercepting those Step Lancers that are trickling in one by one. As this is one of the reasons why Step Lancers can be so good. They can just poke over quick walls. You see that this guy is still attacking that. 5-6 is the will count right now, but I think the first player to get a barracks up is going to be huge, because even just a couple of Halberdiers in this case can be extremely important, and that looks like that's gonna be Code. Viper still fighting this one, as he's gonna go for the market usage. In fact, it's a massive market usage. So he knows exactly that he's not gonna mine gold anytime soon, so he will just keep flooding Step Lancers in this one. Now Halberdiers appear on the field for a snake as well. Code with double the army, double the population, but Code is going to slowly run out of gold. Whereas Viper actually still has 28 Step Lancers in queue, whereas Code has basically none. So Code still has to be careful here. Now he actually kills 3 more wills from Viper, and Viper is down to 5, Code is at 9, and Code is expanding his base. I feel like that is going to be going into the favor of Code, or at least this should go into the favor of Code. Step Lancers still poking each other down over here. Viper is 4 villagers behind. Population is still very close. Both players have super low population here. Viper can reinforce the front line much easier with the Halberdiers, and now Viper starts adding Paladins, which is a good decision here. Paladins are way better than Step Lancers when it comes to like one-on-one combat. Obviously they aren't able to like stack up so well as Step Lancers do. However, that is going to be Viper with the bigger army. If Code loses this, this is gonna be a 6-0, I feel like. Viper is behind by 4 wills, he's got limited map control, as Viper now dives in, snipes a will. He kinda has to stop these castles because Kipchaks will be on the mind of the red player here. 46 versus 28 population only. There is no army. There's absolutely no army for the Code. Like, seriously, if we... Viper just runs in here now, he can kill all the remaining villagers. Viper has 41 army as opposed to 19. Viper doesn't have an awful lot either, but he's gonna be able to stop stuff like this castle, for example, if he spots it. And he needs to place like one pod on that hill because his opponent is going to be able to get a castle up there unless he stops it. Castles are up for the code now, and that means that Kipchak will hit the field, but Viper is able to recover from the initial damage that he suffered from, and Viper is going to sell quite a lot of stone. I feel like Viper will once again go for a bit more of an all-in type strategy here, and just try to play this one with Paladins and Halberdiers. He is queuing Kipchak, but as I said, he sold some stone overall. Population is still pretty close, Code has the will lead, but I feel like the longer this game goes, the better it is for Viper, because in long games, Viper seems to prevail in general, because the more and more closer you resemble the actual late game scenario of a random map game, the better Viper is going to be over Code. So now it looks like the Kipchaks will be coming in here. Code actually secures this gold mine with a castle. Code is still ahead in this one, but he's gotta be careful because Viper is gonna have everything that he needs to redeem himself here in this one, as Code might actually try to dive in to snipe some vills on the town centers. Viper's only 4 on gold, Code is at 13. Viper's gonna have to jump into TCs here, as the Kipchak will run straight in, and they will idle quite a lot of vills here from Viper. Viper's gonna have to send his own Kipchak back. Kipchak numbers are way better overall for the Code. And indeed, the drawback of having so many villager snipes at the beginning of a deathmatch game is that now both players are so weak in terms of economy that this will end up being a stalemate because of that, and that's actually a massive mistake from Code. He just allowed his Kipchak to be poked down by Step Lancers and hit by Paladins, and Viper's army numbers are still slightly better. Viper's eco is actually weaker than his opponent's eco, and his primary gold is completely open for raiding, but he wants to get a castle up here, and as things stand, I feel like now Viper is gonna have every chance that he needs to rebound into this one. So Code, I think, still needs to play aggressive, although Code is gonna be more than happy to secure this neutral gold and stone, and Code will definitely be able to contest this. So Viper is gonna have a hard time contesting neutral resources in here, and you see that Viper's will also get picked off, and he needed to lead the castle foundation as well. So now, we will just basically wait as we'll have siege onagers coming in here for Viper. He has had some nice ground attacks in the previous game. He's gonna have some, or he's gonna need some good ones here as well. Viper will take this hill here, and this could be a great fight for him. That Paladin is gonna be enough to distract the Halberdiers for the time being, but Viper actually bails out on this. So Code actually takes this hill for the time being. Code is gonna have a way better map control. This is the game to win for him, because the map control is way better. He's actually able to contest both neutral gold mines, and one of them actually belongs to him. Relics are also looking slightly better, though Viper already picked up 2, but I think Code can actually secure 3 over here, and Code bring in the Kipchak for some more raiding damage. Viper only at 46 vills, and 62 is the count for Code. And that actually is going to cause quite a lot of idle time on Viper's eco. Viper hasn't been able to push the opponent's eco for quite a while, but he could trap an army of Kipchak in here, and this could be a little bit troublesome for Code. Because look at that, Viper is hunting. Viper is on a mission. And oh boy, this could be very scary for the Code. I feel like all those Kipchak could be trapped in here. As bad as it is for Viper to have half his eco idled here, I feel like he might actually do this for just the sake of having a huge trap here. He wants an enormous trap here. He might need to even drop some houses or something like that to wall this in. Look at that. University wall and something like that as well. No stone walls for Kumans, but that's exactly what Viper has on his mind. Just try to trap that army in there, because if that army goes down, suddenly Viper is gonna have a massive advantage, and you see that some of the Kipchak will actually try to pathfind through the castles. They will be able to escape, but with significant losses. Viper is gonna be able to take down a significant portion of that army. So now, you're gonna have Siege Workshop's up for Viper. He's at 62 wheels, his opponent has 72, but keep check numbers absolutely even right now. Viper is going to intercept some of the Paladins coming in here. Code actually ends up with the majority of the relics, as Viper will have to dive in and potentially snipe that trap. There is a Siege Onager protecting it. Viper splits away from the Onager and will end up finishing off the trap. Just Viper things. Just Viper things. These Paladins actually are causing quite a lot of havoc inside Viper's base, who still doesn't have control over his primary gold, or well, even if he has, he's not mining it right now, so Viper's gonna have to start moving towards this gold mine really rapidly over here, as indeed he's going to lose quite a lot of wheels thanks to those Paladins. Code overall is doing a much better job applying pressure to the opponent's base than Viper is. Viper, however, is stopping a castle over here, so he can prevent Code from accessing that other neutral gold. I just don't see the momentum for Viper, despite the fact that he technically has the population lead. Decent micro for Code over here, as he takes down the Siege Onager, but he took quite a bit of a beating on his Skipjack. So if you take a look at the overall condition of Viper's Skipjack, it's far better than the ones from Code. So many of those Skipjacks are very, very weak for Code. If Viper commits to an engagement, he could and should win that. In this one, more Paladins are being added by our red player Code, who is also mixing in some monks to heal his army in here. Halberdiers now will jump on the Paladins, as Code still has to be very careful, as I said, committing against this one, because he could easily lose his Skipjack, and Viper is gonna bring in another Onager to take a shot. Takes a shot, finds quite a lot of kills overall, and the Paladin is unable to finish off that Onager. Oh my goodness. Don't tell me Viper turned this around. Don't tell me he's gonna turn this around, because everything seems to start pointing towards that. As Viper takes the score lead, takes the population lead. He's got 51 Skipjack on the field as opposed to just 29. Code forced to sell quite a lot of food so he can actually get some more gold for himself. Other side, Code actually launches an offensive against Viper's base, which results in Viper losing control of his stone mine. Viper still is on a timer because his primary goal, as I said, is far from being safe, but he seems to have some momentum, and for whatever crazy reason, the monasteries for Code are out in the open. Viper could easily steal those relics if he wanted to. Onager now comes out. Look at that ground attack from Viper again. What happened to Code military? Was it the trap? Partially was the trap, but also it was some Onager hits from Viper, because Viper was able to land some nice Onager hits over there. Left side, Viper has to divert all his forces in here to try and save that castle. One of the castles goes down. The other one, however, will probably be safe, because that's a lot of Skipjack from Viper. Arrows flying everywhere. Although Paladin Meat Shield is in here for our red player. Is there any Onagers coming for Viper? Yes, there is. As the Paladins will try to run past the castle here, Viper tries to quick wall but fails to do so, which will result in some Paladins once again rampaging the eco of Viper. Viper's gold income is not satisfactory, I have to say. For whatever reason, he's not mining that gold, and he will have to. Now it looks like the traps are down. Viper will actually secure that stone mine for himself. Will lose a couple of wheels to the Paladins over here. Right side, however, Viper is shelling that castle, and Viper is probably moving towards this neutral gold mine right now. This hilltop castle is extremely important overall for the Code, as Viper onagers down his own halberdiers. This one is actually getting cleaned up. Humans don't have access to heavy camos, so it's just pure camos that are fighting as these Paladins to clean this up. But as I said, Viper wants to secure that neutral gold mine, and for the time being, Viper actually wasn't able to steal any relics from the opponent. Nice move from the Code, trying to dive in and snipe that trap. Viper repairs it, but the trap still goes down, so Code is able to keep that castle alive for now. Still, Skipjack numbers are better for Viper now, so I would say that now this is an even game. Viper with huge amount of idle time. He still needs to be careful, because as I said, he has his primary gold dangerously exposed, as he's gonna bring up some more traps to start taking out this castle, and starts taking the primary gold, or the random neutral gold here, alongside the stone. Whereas Code actually wants to break into Viper's base here from the left side, assembling another force of Kipchak and Hussar. Viper will quick wall against the Hussar as they will just bump into walls there. And now Onager comes in, and an SO hit on those Kipchak could be devastating. They actually land one on the Halberdiers. And once again, Viper is just pushing this one back, whereas on the other side, he's also able to launch an offensive, although he loses the Trap and the Onager to the Paladins. Those are some beautiful snipes from the Code. This is something that I always admired in Code's Deathmatch gameplay. He's just able to find value for just a couple of cavalry units so easily, sniping traps overall. Viper, ambitious fight over here for Viper, and might have been an overextension here. I wanted to say that it's a little too ballsy to fight up hills against 3 siege onagers in the castle, but he still takes down the trap here, so this may have been worth it for him. I don't know if this was really worth it, but it could have been, because this castle is slowly going down. His opponent is now going for full Hussar, which will be an excellent meat shield in front of the Kipchak, and this trap once again will go down. Also, Code is dispatching a couple of Hussar towards Viper's base, and I have to say that Code is outplaying Viper in this one by a massive margin. So now it looks like Code is going to commit to this fight, and when the Hussars soak up the damage, he can just send in the Kipchak to deal with Viper's Kipchaks. Numbers are getting closed in that regard. Viper at 104 villagers, his opponent is at 119, but the populations are still pretty close. So let's see if Viper is able to take down either this castle or this castle. He will need at least one of those being taken down. He's bringing in a lot of siege launches, and you see that Viper actually wants to mine this gold mine, but he just can't access it anymore. There is so many villas around it. But in exchange, this secondary or this neutral gold is not accessible right now for him. Beautiful hill control over here for the Code with onagers and Kipchaks, but there is the siege onagers for Viper, and those are firing down hills. Nice move from Code to send in the Hussar to deal with the onagers. They still land a big shot on the Kipchak, and another big shot comes in here from Viper. Only 20 Kipchaks remain on the battlefield for the Code, as opposed to Viper's 33. Once again, Code is able to force off Viper from this gold, and that might be sufficient, because Viper is sort of on a timer. He's up against 3 relics, and he also can't access one of the neutral gold mines, so this is going to be a little bit trickier for Viper to pull off than the previous games were. So, now it's going to be Elite Kipchak coming in for the Viper. From these castles, I like how he's reinforcing his base with some more castles, and we could be in for a very long game over here, because it is bearing the signs of a typical stalemate. Neither of the players being able to push. I still like Code's position a lot more, as Viper goes for some crazy quick walls to protect his gold miners. And another crazy quick wall, but there's still some holes on his wall. So still, at least Code is able to raid Viper's eco. Viper hasn't been able to raid at all very recently. So as long as Code is the one raiding, Code is the one with the advantage, especially when Viper is behind by relics as well. And once again, this is beautifully done. Dive in with the Hussar, snipe the trap, and then disengage. That's exactly what Code is doing. This should be a game for him, because wherever I look, now he's dominating the game. Viper is doing his best, but I feel like this game might be too far gone for him. In terms of map control, I definitely think that Code deserved this game, because he's playing really well in this one. He played good in the other ones as well, but he finally manages to get one against Viper. Because as things stand, I don't know how Viper could actually get out of this mess. He's losing castles, he's losing map control, and he's up against a Kuman player with 50 farmers, so he would just keep sending in Hussar after Hussar and just grind down Viper's farmer numbers. And while Viper is busy distracting these, or being distracted by that, these castles could also get pushed. Now, Viper is actually going to be assembling one big horde here. And that's something to point out. Code is mostly light cav now. So suddenly, if a huge horde of paladins, siege ram, onager, and Kipchak arrive, that could be pretty devastating. So the outcome of this upcoming engagement could actually maybe swing the battle back in the favor of Viper, but we'll see if that's going to be the case. Kipchak dive in, snipe the onagers, beautifully done by Viper. Paladins will be able to take down the remaining onagers with the exception of 2. Kipchak now sniping the traps, and the Viper annihilates this army over here. He's down to 88 vills, so his eco has suffered from a massive damage. Now his rams are also exposed to light cav, but he actually destroyed the army of Code over here. Code still 26 Kipchak though. Viper is losing way too many expensive units though. That's way too many expensive units. The rams, the trap over here, and Code is doing a masterful job keeping these two castles alive. So, at this point, Viper will probably try to launch an assault here in the middle to try and contest these two castles and just secure this region. But Viper already lost control over this neutral gold mine, so he's on a serious timer. He's basically running out of gold in the next 1 or so minutes. And also, as I said, Code is doing a much better job raiding Viper's eco than Viper is. In fact, Viper is not doing any raiding right now. 85 vills to Viper. He's doing an okay job replenishing his vill count. But once again, look at this from Code. This is so well done. He dies in with the Paladins, and he will have just a little too few to snipe that trap. Viper were probably going to make one big push happen here. But when that one big push happens, that's gonna be scary for Code. We have seen big pushes in the Acropolis game. For now, Viper doesn't want to engage until those onagers are still on the hill. Siege rams on the way as well. I think Viper could really use 2 or 3 onagers here though. Even if they're firing up hills, they would be so much needed to deal with the Kipchak. Now it's going to be some Step Lancers, Paladins, onagers coming from the other side. I don't think that Viper is going to be able to pierce through this defense. Even if he does, he's going to end up losing all his army doing so. The castle seems to be going down. Viper 106 army against 51 only. Oh dear lord. Don't tell me. Don't tell me that this is happening. Because as things stand, Viper is still having a decent amount of Kipchaks and his opponent is out of gold. And remember, it's 3 relics, sure, but 2 of them are in this monastery. If Viper takes this down, Viper has the relic advantage! Viper! That could have been a game-losing move from him. That Kipchak blob is something that he needs to keep alive to have any shot at winning this game. And many of those Kipchaks are now super weak, but you see that now Code is basically Hussar. And one of the things that we haven't talked about is that Code actually used up all his gold already, whereas Viper actually held out with less gold in his bank, because Viper still has some gold on his gold mine, and the neutral gold as well, so this is the stage where Code is going to struggle for gold and Viper won't, even though Viper is taking some very inefficient fights over here as well, with the traps being lost. He kind of seems to be lacking the meat shield to fight against this. Viper at 46 Kipchak, his opponent at 31 right now, but now Viper starts trickling in light cav to the opponent's eco, and I feel like Viper starts to gain a little bit of a momentum here. It's so awkward because Code was leading the entire game, but I feel like this is the area where Viper really starts becoming a beast. So, it is almost exclusively Hussar now for Code in terms of cavalry. He still has a decent force of Kipchak. Viper's Kipchak numbers are actually slightly better, and Viper is mostly operating with Halberdiers and not Hussars. Viper is going to castle drop the left side to secure that wood line, overall all these wood lines over here for himself, and Viper is still unable to access this neutral gold and the neutral stone as well. Code is actually having a perfect map presence over there, as Viper will see the Hussar coming in, so he's going to try to track those with the Halberdiers. Kipchak will try to engage this one, and it looks like Code won't be able to push, so as I said, this feels very much like a stalemate here, but Viper will dispatch a couple of Hussar to the right side, try and get some damage done. It looks like Code will react to that, so those Hussar will be cleaned up, but if there is no Hussar here, this is something that maybe Viper can actually start pushing. Code actually rebuilds the castle on that hill, so Viper's big final push here might have been insufficient. So, I still like how Code is actually a little bit more aggressive when it comes to raiding the opponent's base. Like, he's always forcing the issue, and Viper is always forced to defend, and that's going to help quite a bit at just grinding down Viper's numbers, although now Viper is coming in here with some raids himself. Viper is only at 80 villagers or so, but it seems like Viper is content with the vill count that he has right now, and he is killing quite a lot of vills from the Code, and Code is much more reliant on Hussar than Viper is. That's something to point out, because if you take a look at Code, he's got 25 kip checks. Viper has 53, so Code has to rely a lot more on Hussar for his army, so he needs a lot more farming eco than Viper does, and overall the resource retention of those kip checks are just way better, and now I see Viper raiding everywhere. Code is still okay, but I feel like slow and steady, as if Code is starting to lose momentum, and his raids have been somewhat ineffective at finishing off Viper, whereas Viper is now starting to put some serious pressure on the opponent's economy here with some light cavalry. You see them trickling in here to the left side to the farming eco, on the right side to the wood eco. Code is trying to do the exact same thing, and Viper still hasn't noticed that there is an overchop there, but Viper is going to dispatch a couple of halberdiers to clean this one up. Still, Viper has to be careful not to lose that many vills, because he's not doing a good job defending against the raids. Big fight in the middle, though Viper apparently ate some big onager shots as the light cav are diving in from Viper. Look at Viper. Look at Viper again, just sends in the Hussar, deals with the onagers. These Hussars will be dealing with the Trebs, and Viper keeps that castle alive once again. Now he's losing a huge amount of vills though, and he's down to 152 population. I feel like Viper is getting pushed getting punished quite heavily for the fact that his base is not very well defended. He's got some defensive castles, but that's basically all that you got here on Viper. 69 vills. Back on track to that. It's so hard to judge this game because Viper doesn't need that much eco, as his army doesn't need to be replenished as often as like a full Hussar army needs to be. And Viper not pushing this side. Look at this. There is absolutely nothing from Code that can stop this one. In fact, Code is at 95 army, most of that is Hussar. Viper is dispatching all his skipjack to the left side. But I think that this castle should go down, although I don't like how Viper is sending 2 rams to take down siege workshops, because this way the castle stays up for a little longer and the rams are sort of unprotected. Code is going to be forced to defend this one. Code, however, overruns Viper on the north, so Viper is going to have to react to that. And after all, I don't think that anything is going to change in terms of map position. Both players will just be able to sort of cancel each other's armies. Viper, however, this is going to be a bad fight for him, and I still believe Code is playing this game way better than Viper does. But for whatever reason, Viper is still not dead yet. He's only 170 population though, so maybe the slow and painful death starts to happen here for Viper. He doesn't really have the eco to replenish these numbers either, and now he's struggling with population, whereas his opponent is banking up a lot of wood. This shouldn't be a game for Viper. He's trying his best, but I think that Code should have the advantage in this game. This neutral gold mine that Viper is unable to take is just going to hurt so much for Viper. He's going for a quick walls, so the Hussar can break into his base. This has to be a very, very long game for Viper to have a chance. Even in that case, he's down by a relic. That's going to matter quite a bit overall for him. And he's also down by a neutral gold mine, so that's minus 2.4k gold for Viper. More Hussar on the way for the Code, and I feel like he's just slowly grinding down the eco of Viper here. Villager by villager, he's actually making Viper's eco collapse. As long as Viper has that blob of 50 kipchak, that's alright, and truth being told, Code barely has any kipchak left, so as I said, Viper's resource retention on his army is way better. However, Viper's eco is just an absolute mess right now. Kipchak still on the field though, and Kipchak Hussar should just beat full Hussar. But you actually need Hussar for Viper to act as a meat shield, and I don't really see his eco being able to sustain that in the long run. That takes a nice heal over here to snipe down some of those Hussar, and the siege ram is gonna get taken down as well. Viper finishing off the remaining Kipchak. And the fact that you have 45 Kipchak against 10 is something that probably gives a massive hope for Viper. because his opponent is now almost exclusively cavalry or light cav. And those light cavs, they will be able to influence your eco, but it's not like you can actually base a direct push on them. And now Viper also getting some raids in. Viper's eco raids are sort of insignificant as things stand because Code still has a very, very good resource income, so Viper's raids are barely doing anything, whereas Code is definitely able to do a lot more with that, double the villager kills as the losses for our red player here. Still, the big thing is that Code is constantly throwing away expensive, well not super expensive, but he's still losing light cav after light cav. Whereas Viper is barely losing any actual combat units. He's losing some Hussar, but the key thing is that his main force, the Kipchak, are untouched. And that's going to matter quite a bit because resource efficiency will be something that's extremely important to look at. So if you look at the KD, that tells you that Viper has killed a lot more units, and I believe that also applies for resource efficiency for Viper. If Viper can ever secure this golden stone, that might be enough for him to finish the game. Code actually tries to sneak a watchtower on the opponent's wood line here, because soon wood control is going to be a thing, and you see that Code is more and more focusing on controlling this right side, because he knows that the majority of the wood is over there, and Viper is going to need that corner. Like, Viper must have that corner to have a shot in a long game, because you see that Code is having quite a lot of wood lines to work with still, especially this one is going to be beautiful in the long run. But Viper needs these wood lines to work with. In fact, Viper is already running out of wood really rapidly here. Down by Relic, down by wood lines, looks really rough for Viper, despite the fact that he still has the score lead. In here, Viper needs to start making something happen, basically. Like, right here, right now. He's gonna get some paladins out, because, as I said, he doesn't have to use his gold to anything. Basically, he just has the Kipchaks up and that's it. He can afford to mix in a couple of paladins. Other side, this tower is actually very annoying for the Viper. Wouldn't be surprised to see a trap or a ram coming in to try and deal with that. It's only a watchtower though, so it's not the end of the world. As Code comes in once again, Viper actually tries a blacksmith wall. That blacksmith wall is just purely for this purpose of slowing down those Hussar into your base. Viper is back to 108 villagers, but I think he's going to lose quite a lot here, although Viper is not prepared for these eco raids, and as I said, resource efficiency is always something that you gotta look at. That, sure, Code is gonna kill some vills here, but he's losing a huge amount of Hussars doing so, and that may backfire in the long run because he's being fairly inefficient with these raids. Viper coming in with a couple of Hussar, and this could find so much. There is nothing that protects these vills in here, so Viper can also get some nice raids in here for himself. And now what's more important is that when Code sends in those Hussar into Viper's eco, Viper can access this gold mine. And when that happens, he can add some more Kipchak. Viper actually might commit to this fight, as the Kipchak numbers are back to 36 for Code. Viper sending in some more Hussar to start raiding the left side of Code's base. Code is floating 10k wood, Viper is having 0 resources in the bank, basically. So this should still be a super long game for Viper to have any shot at this. And this hill is controlled very nicely by our red player. It looks like Viper commits to this fight, which may be a bad move. For now it's only the meat shield melting. And if it's only the meat shield melting, you can commit to this fight, and look at how Viper is playing this. That's so smart. He's focusing on the Kipchak, not the meat shield, and he once again annihilates the army of his opponent, and really, his opponent has a lot more resources to work with. But the efficiency of Viper is absolutely amazing here. And both of the players are still pop-capped. So now you got gold miners for Viper, that's going to help quite a bit. Stone could also help a lot. Viper doesn't have any siege right now, but there may be traps or rams coming in. And all the Kipchaks are going down here from the Code. Left side is still nothing happening, Code banking up as much wood as he can, so he's just waiting for Viper to run out of resources. But Viper might have a window here, because Viper's army value was actually way better than Code's army value. Look at that. 8.8k army value versus 5.5. And if this castle goes down, suddenly Viper's gonna have all the freedom in the world to push these wood lines, which are extremely important wood lines. The Hussar will be needed here as a meat shield to the Kipchak, as now we're gonna bring in the siege rams to take down the castle, and the siege ram will be able to start knocking on the doors of the castle. The Hussars aren't able to access the rams. The Kipchaks in the castle are not able to take down the rams right now, and it very much seems like Code is actually getting pushed off from this hill. A crucial moment in the game, because this hill is extremely important. There's a siege onager coming out though, and that could save the day here for the Code. Viper dives in, snipes down the siege onager. This castle is going down. This castle is going down, and we talked about how much of a heartbreaker the previous games could have been for the Code. If he actually ends up losing this game, that's going to collapse his morale, I believe. Because really, he had an enormous advantage in this game, and if he ends up losing this, then I don't know what could actually stop Viper in game number 6. And now you got more Hussar raids for Viper. I feel like Viper sees the blood in the water, and he starts crippling the wood income of his opponent. What Viper doesn't know is that his opponent is still sitting on 11k wood, so it's not the end of the world right now for the Code. But I think that now Viper is thinking about just raiding his way into a position where he can start contesting this monastery and these castles in the middle, because Viper wants to secure some more wood for himself. He still didn't actually deal with this tower, and he also seems to somewhat underestimate the importance of this push here that took down his TC, and now Viper has very limited amount of wood to work with. That is overly concerning for the Snake, let's just say that. But he's launching a big offensive in the middle. And if this offensive actually ends up cleaning up these workshops, the TC and the castles, and even more important, the monastery, that may be enough for Viper to drag this game out even longer and have a chance at coming back. There is no meat shield in front of those Kipchaks this time though, so the Rams will be exposed to the light cavalry. This is actually pretty sloppy from Viper here. That's his game on the line, I would say here, because if he loses this army here entirely, then that's going to be awfully expensive, and it looks like we have another pause. Interesting. So, as things stand, Viper's at 35 Kipchaks, his opponent at 24. Villager counts are still even, population is fairly close for both players, but Viper is losing expensive rams over here, and as I said, with the limited amount of wood he has, replenishing those rams will be hard. And look at Code. Code is immediately rebuilding that castle when he has the opportunity to do so. Viper is having quite a lot of raids, by the way. One on the north and the one on the south as well. So quite a lot of raiding damage can be done by Viper. The problem for him is that his opponent is on just having so much wood in the bank that that won't impact Code Zico. What could impact Code Zico is what? The fact that you can raid the farming eco. So the only way to cripple Code's will and Hussar production is to hit the farming eco, and that seems to be fairly intact still. So 73 on food as opposed to 72, it's pretty much perfect for Code right now. So Code actually had to pause, and now we will continue with the game. Viper is actually doing quite a lot of eco damage though to Code, and Code has to be careful, because I was actually saying that farm villager count is something that needs to be preserved, and I see more and more farm villagers lost here from the Code, and if he loses his farmers, he's gonna get overrun by Viper, because the Kipchak numbers are still better for Viper. Viper is also mixing in some hubs, and I feel like Viper might be doing enough damage here to his opponent. It's only 58 on farms as opposed to 72 now, and Viper brings in a trap. Needless to say, protecting that trap is going to be between life and death for Viper. He's gonna have to use his own Hussar to block the opponent's Hussar and use the hill to his advantage. That's a nice fight for Viper. The meat shield can melt on either side, as an onager is being brought in by our red player, being pushed up to the front line. Viper tries his best to snipe this one with the Hussar, and Viper actually gets the kill on the Onager. He loses 3 keep checks in exchange, and most of his meat shield has absolutely gone destroyed. But this is a fight that Viper seems like he wants to commit to. He's gonna have to withdraw for a moment if he wants to keep his keep check alive. Still 41 keep check against 18. Code sending his last bits of stone for repairs. On that cast, another Onager comes out, and that Onager is getting some big hits on Viper. That might have been the game there for Viper. Because this is exactly the type of fight that Code needed to finish off Viper. Viper was only kept alive by his remaining keep check. And now it's all about just finishing off Viper's eco for Code. I definitely think that Code deserves a win here, because he has outplayed Viper for the majority of the game. But as things stand, Viper is not giving up just yet. Code bringing traps right now. And still 76 on food. I don't think Viper was successful collapsing the opponent's eco here. And 160 pop against 180. And yeah, honestly, the score might just mislead Viper here so badly. Because Viper probably feels he's ahead. Although I don't understand how he feels he's ahead when he knows exactly he's behind by Relic. Honestly, most of the score comes from that KD. Because Viper was a lot more efficient with his fights. But the problem for Viper is not KD. It's map control. Viper has 0 map control. He's unable to access wood, basically. Like, he's consuming the final bits of trees left for him, basically. He is still not giving up, though, trying to raid his way back into the game, and you gotta be careful, because if a couple of Onagers push up here, and that's a lot of Hussar. Viper not shooting, and he mismicros his army at a crucial time. I think Viper is making the biggest mistakes when it matters the most, and that seems to be the difference between the two players. Those two Onagers were extremely expensive for Viper, and he just mismicroed them so badly. And now, Code is coming in with just an overwhelming flood of Hussar. He did snipe the trap, that's absolutely true, but that's not going to be sufficient here. Viper is still doing quite a lot of raiding damage. Code down to 58, 55 farmers. So Code's gotta be careful. He's rebuilding his eco, but Code is exclusively Hussar, basically. And Viper is actually getting some hubs on the field, so those Hussars are going down quite rapidly, although now Viper is losing Lumberjacks in the process. I just don't know... I still don't know how Viper could win this game, because he seems to be unable to break out of this kind of confined position that he's in. And eventually he will just run out of wood, because that's exactly what Code is playing for. So, Code has 10,000 wood, and Viper has 300 in the bank, and Viper has no choppable wood left, basically. This is the wood line that he can still safely take. The rest of them are just wide open, half depleted. I don't think, like, if Viper knew that his opponent is sitting on 10k wood, I think he probably would have resigned. And yeah, absolutely. Code could definitely go for Onagers here to destroy these remaining trees, because Viper is not having anything here that could actually stop that from happening, and Code is already sitting on a huge amount of wood. Viper assembling another force over here of Kipchak. Yes, that's gonna be 77 Hussar overall. Versus Viper is only 22. Viper is actually very, very low on Hussar numbers. The Onagers don't need to make it up here. There is siege workshops here for Code. That's why I'm saying that indeed Onager cutting here is actually very viable, because Code has 2 siege workshops here. And you see that Viper is already colonizing this wood line over here, so he knows the importance of that. I feel like Viper doesn't have sufficient meat shield. The 29 Hussars won't be enough to withstand a push from 75 over here. And hip check numbers aren't super dominant for Viper. It's 40-20, which is nice, but I'm not sure if that actually decides the engagement. Oh, this is a big stalemate. This is one of those games where you just know that Code is supposed to win this one, yet the score that is a bit deceiving for Viper. the fact that he believes that he has taken very cost-efficient engagements makes him not quit, and because of that, it is just sort of a very, very long and grindy stalemate. Viper's only shot at getting back into this game, though, is if he can actually collapse the opponent's food eco. Like, he needs to push Code down to like 20 Veils on food, and then grind down those Hussar numbers. And even then, it's going to be hard because Code already has like 5k food in the bank. Nice raid coming in here from Viper, though. 63 food villagers still on the field for the Code, and this is exactly the reaction that he needs to make. 8 vills queued up already. He knows that immediately after losing vills, he needs to queue up more, because the idea is that he needs to have consistent food income, and you see that he is still at 80 on food. 86 for Viper, but Viper even forced to make a Town Center over here to protect those vills, but that's obviously going to be problematic from the perspective that the Town Center actually costs quite a lot of wood in a stage where wood's going to be a sort of a luxury resource soon. Habadirs are trying to intercept the Hussar here, but it looks like they won't be able to engage. Viper sends in some more Hussars. So really, he's just trying to raid his way back into the game, but I just don't think that that's going to be possible. If Code is just doing what he did for the last 20 minutes, he will just keep replenishing vills, and Viper will never be able to push him down to a pit here. 46 more Hussars in queue, and it looks like we'll have a big commitment from Code here, although he might actually stop to fight the hubs. Viper has to send all the Kipchak back because this is a serious push from Code. He wants to finish this game here. One thing to consider is that this game is dragging out to be very long, so not for this game, but for the next one, attrition could be a factor for either player. We have seen that Viper could have some attrition issues nowadays in other tournaments, and for the Code as well, who is not experienced with playing super long sets of tournaments. So it looks like Viper is not gonna lose a huge amount of vills here. He will definitely get some losses, but it's not gonna be the end of the world type of a thing for him, and that's quite a lot of Hussars that got killed. Still, there is 58 more in queue and 64 already on the field, so it's not like this mattered that much for Code. He didn't kill a huge amount of vills. This tower actually now goes down to Viper's Kipchak, so he can actually reclaim his wood line. And Viper is also trying to play for wood control here. Like you can see, he's trying to pressure this wood line. The problem is that Viper doesn't know he's up against a player that has 7,000 wood in the bank. And it's also worth noting that the Kipchak numbers are now better for Code. So Code has so good food eco and so much wood that he was floating that he was able to just sell some and get some more Kipchak out. And this is the moment where Viper won't be able to push this hill ever again. He is still trying to queue up Hussar, but from this point on, from every measurable way, Code actually takes over. Code actually ungarrisoned his relic in here and tried to bring it back to a monastery, but the monk got killed, so the relic actually is open right now. So right now it's only 2 relics for both players. On the north, some nice raids here as well for the Code, and Viper is assembling another big siege ram push. He's trying to push this here, but there is enough here for the Code to hold this. Code is out of food, but he still has 80 on food to replenish his numbers. Viper is gonna have to clean up these cavalry raids. I just feel like this is the typical scenario where the score is just misleading Viper so much. Because Viper, I think, I don't know how, but maybe he believes that he's still leading, but that's just not true. That's not true at all. But it looks like Viper is gonna push one. I think this is gonna be the final push for Viper. He probably knows that he's running out of wood to chop. He's going to distract his opponent by raiding the food eco and simultaneously start pushing the middle with the trebs, and there is some siege rams as well. The missing relic is over here, so that should be under the control of Code, but Code will have to make a monk to pick it up, and that's the big thing. So it's actually going to be fairly expensive, as Viper will probably try to push towards these wood lines. He feels like these are pretty much empty. Still, he doesn't know that his opponent is on 7k wood bank, and now Viper is gonna have to take a fight against the overwhelming amounts of Hussar. Still 72 Hussar in the queue for our red player. Viper still has 50 on the field, as the Kipchak will now dive in, and once again Code This is so huge from Code, and really this is why he deserves winning this game. The type of fights that he has been taking was always super efficient. Sniping down 2 traps at this stage is enormous. And, well, there's actually 51 kip checks over here for our red player. There is only 42 for Viper. I think Viper believes that he's got the advantage here, but that's not true. That's not true at all. And Viper is, you see that he's already scrambling to chop wood over here. He's gonna be running out of wood soon. And in that case, no siege weapons. And the Code could actually take his first game against Viper in a Deathmatch World Cup final since last year. Because last year it was a 5-0 Grand Finals. It's a 4-0 scoreline right now for Viper, but all signs point towards Code winning this one. As things stand, Viper is consuming the final 3s left for him, and Code is just going to keep spamming Hussar, and now he's got a good resource income in terms of food and wood, so he can sell some of those to get a couple more kip check out, and just be even in terms of kip check numbers to Viper. Viper, I think his food eco is actually going to collapse faster than Code's food eco. I don't see Code losing enough villagers to cripple that food eco, whereas Viper is at 80 vills, a lot of idols everywhere. I just feel like the next wave should be able to finish Viper. So it's just a matter of when now, I believe. Although Viper believes otherwise. He's still queuing up Rams. He has 52 kip check, that's what he believes in. But his opponent also has 57, actually no, just 44 kip check, but 57 Hussar to support. Viper is losing vills here really fast, and yet in this case, when you're going to late game, you can even start destroying the lumber camp and the TC. Because that costs quite a lot of wood for Viper, so rebuilding a lumber camp is going to be extremely expensive as well. Viper is going to be out of wood. And yeah, Viper is just out of resources. He's 160 population only. His opponent is now 200. I think that Viper just believes that he has a better bank, which is ambitious, but he's got 3,000 score lead, so he probably believes that he's in a slightly better spot than his opponent. Otherwise, he would have resigned already. He knows exactly he doesn't have wood to work with, and now it's going to be the Code that launches the offensive. He still hasn't garrisoned the 3rd relic, so the relic numbers are completely even, but that's a beautiful surround from the red Hussar. Nice move from Viper to jump into the castle and then jump out on the other side. Siege Gems will try to make a push against that castle, and this push might stall out. This, like, I'm not gonna lie, this is a little bit underwhelming to cast, like this game, because the thing is that it would be a miracle for Viper to turn this back. However, he doesn't know how much behind he is, so he still believes he has to fight on, and we're just seeing an absolute long, super grindy stalemate for 2 hours now. Because this game has been 2 hours long in-game time. And this is a best of 11. By the way, imagine if this best of 11 was full of games like this. So that would be on like a 15-hour set. Still, Viper is officially out of wood. He's still doing his best to chop some trees that are left in here, but I don't think that he knows that Code's resource bank is much greater than his. Viper is at the edge of his resources, and he will start dropping in population quite fast. So just no wood income for Viper, not at all. And when there is no wood income, you can't even just make siege weapons to push the game. That's the thing. Whereas Code comes in here. Where are the relics set? That's always an interesting thing to look at. Because in super late game deathmatch, you can actually go for the relics. Like, try to dive in with light cav and snipe the monasteries. Because if you ungarrison them, your opponent has to make a new monk to garrison them, which is going to be awfully expensive when the map starts running out of resources. By the way, I just want to highlight, imagine if this was a Portuguese mirror. A Portuguese mirror like this would never end. A bit of a miscoordination over here for the Code. He didn't really have the meat shield in front of his army here. So he's down to 36 kip check, but his opponent is at 39. And as I said, Viper's population is at a stagnant 160, 170. Whereas on the other side, as Viper is going to lose another Siege Onager here, Code is just so efficient with those snipes. That's what's winning him the game. The fact that he's able to just go in, snipe the siege weapons is working out like this. How do draws work in that Portuguese scenario? There is no draws in competitive Age of Empires, so this is why I said that thank God this is not a Portuguese mirror, because it would never end. As Viper now understands that he's out of wood and resigns. GG, Code got 5-0'd in the last Deathmatch World Cup Grand Finals. He was down 4 games, and they went to Arabia with Kuman mirrors. And now it looks like Code is not gonna go out without a fight. So, yeah, I'm here. I just had a fairly important message to respond to. And I also will take like a half a minute of a break here because I actually want to run to the restroom. As this was a super long game. So, be right back. And we will continue with the next game. I'm fairly certain that the players will also take a couple of minutes of break. All right, so welcome back, everybody, to Deathmatch World Cup. And we will be jumping into game number 6 over here. Let's see if the players are all set to go. What do we have here? We got 4 Lakes Hans Mirror. And the countdown is just starting, so perfect. We will actually have the next game coming up here in a matter of moments. Viper versus the Code. Viper is up by 3 games. 2 more still to go for him to win this set, but the Code actually a pretty convincing game in this one. So there is a chance for Code. As I said, if he plays 100%, And if he can build on the advantage that he gets at the early game, then he can actually beat Viper. That's the most important thing. That the difference between this game and the previous ones were that Viper actually lost a lot of villagers early on, and this time Code was able to capitalize on it. So, in comparison to, let's say, the other games like Acropolis, for example, where Code wasn't able to capitalize on it, this time Viper lost quite a lot of vills, and Code ended up finishing him off in a very, very long and grindy game where relic control was extremely important as well. So Code still had a hard time finishing off Viper, and this is not something that we should overlook. That, as I said, it was pretty hard for Code to finish off Viper here. That's what I wanted to say. My brain also starts melting after 6 hours of casting today. And with that, we will jump into the next game over here. Hans Mirror on 4 lakes. Now, this is the setup that favors Viper strength so much. And we got Ryan Linkus with the Prime sub. Thank you so much. I appreciate that a lot. Thank you, thank you. Welcome to the stream. So we will jump into game number 6. We will have the Code on the right side in red, as Hans left side is going to be the Viper in blue, as Hans as well, of course, because we are playing mirror civs in every game from now on. And this is Viper's... no, wait, this is not... This is actually Code's home map, because the current losing player's home map is played next, right? I'll have to double check, but... Exactly. This is basically Code's home map, which is surprising because I would think that this map plays to the strengths of Viper, and speaking of Viper, he is the one that picks off 2 vills at the beginning, whereas on the other side, 0 kills from the Code. I don't know, it's hard to select a good home map against Viper, but Viper has caught the start so well here. Gets the market up, sells the resources first, kills 2 vills already, and look at Code. That market is gonna be super late for him. I feel like this start was awful for him. He's still going to be able to sell some stone. In a Honeyc Mirror, you can definitely afford to sell some more stone than in other Civilization matchups, and a little bit of a sloppiness now from Viper, losing a vill here to that Paladin, but in exchange, he's killing quite a lot from Code as well. He already killed 6, and Viper only lost 3. So, 7-4, 3 villagers advantage is massive in a Honeyc Mirror because Hun Mirrors can snowball really fast. Whoever gets the archery range up first will have the Cav Archers, and those will be able to pick off additional vills and just start picking off the Halberdiers as well. 8-5 right now. It's a steady 3 villager differential between the 2 players, and that is enough for Viper to capitalize on it even more so. 2 vills only for Code. Oh my goodness. As I said, this is not a thing that he can afford to have against Viper. Viper now loses quite a lot as well, so he's down to 4 free vills as well. So, 2 vills for both players, man. We will do the exact same thing as with the previous game. Both players losing everything at the beginning, and that's just going to result in like a very, very long and stalemate game. Code is at 1 villager, guys. 1 vill for Code. He lost 12 in this game and killed 10. I have to say that both players actually suffer from massive villager losses at the beginning of the game. Still, Viper consistently had more villagers throughout the game, and let's not underestimate that. So if you take a look at how well developed his production is, it's much better than the one from Code. So, yes, Viper also lost a lot of vills, but he consistently has a 2 or 3 villagers advantage. And that means that he's already getting the Cav Archers out. And the Cav Archer numbers early on can be so decisive, because whoever has Cav Archers on the field can pick off those Halberdiers very easily. And this is a good fight for Viper over here. Production seems to be slightly stronger for him, as you would expect from the player that is ahead in the villager count. And now Viper could send a couple of Cav Archers to try and pick off some additional building vills. 8 to 6 is still a will count. Viper already expanding his base with town centers. He doesn't have a huge amount of cav archers to clean up these halberdiers though, so I think Viper takes an overly ambitious engagement over here, which is far from being gold efficient by any means, as he's going to lose the majority of the paladins here to the halberdiers. Viper needed some more cav archers to back this up. This was, I think, a bit of an overextension, but speaking of cav archers, he's gonna come back here and pick off 1, 2, 3, and those are the Siege Workshop Veils. Those are some very important veils because those are the ones making the Siege Workshop for you that are responsible for adding Siege Rams. And Hunnic Mirrors can snowball really fast because you start moving towards Cav Archers, and whoever doesn't have Siege Rams is going to have a tough time in Cav Archer versus Cav Archer fights. Right now it's 18 Cav Archers only for the code, Viper is at 31, and Viper is already adding Eco in this one. Most importantly, going to be Siege Rams in here. Code at 6 veils. His army numbers are still nice, but most of it is going to be halberdiers. And it looks like, is it an admin re for an unallowed Civ matchup? Is that a confirmed info? Obviously, good luck messaging the players in the middle of a deathmatch game, so it very much seems like this could be nullified, but honestly, this is so hard because it's an admin re, but it was code selecting these civilizations, and Viper seems to be winning this game so far. Like, the thing is that the big problem right now when it comes to calling an admin re in game, I think the Hans mirror is not allowed because we had a Hans mirror, right? Yeah, game number 1 was Arabia Hans mirror, and you probably can't pick Hans mirror again because it was already played in game number 1. That's probably the reason why it's an unallowed Civ matchup. So that means that Viper's advantage here is not gonna matter as things stand. Nilly is the boss, so if he says it's an admin restart, it's gonna be an admin restart. The reason why you are still seeing the game happening is because, number 1, there is a 2-minute spectator delay, but more importantly, the players don't look at any messages, any chat when they're focusing on games. That is particularly true in Deathmatch, because in Deathmatch they are just, even more so focused. What is the meaning deleting the market? You mean why do they delete the market after selling resources? They usually delete it so that the opponent doesn't see them having it. And it also makes some room. That's their thing. So they need space for farming eco. But more importantly, oftentimes you delete it because you don't want your opponent to see that you have used the market. Because that actually can give some clues about strategies. And I feel like this admin re comes very, very handy for Code because he's getting overrun here. He's getting annihilated. And I'm not gonna lie, this hurts Viper so badly because it wasn't Viper's decision to play this matchup. It was Code selecting the home map and the civilizations. And Viper actually won this game, so this would actually screw over Viper really badly here. But everyone know each other use market? That's not true. You not always use market. Sometimes you delay it quite heavily. Nowadays you see it much more often than, let's say, like a year ago, and I think this is the moment where they pause because they get the message from Nilly that it's an admin restart. Yeah, I understand, Briss. I actually mentioned that already. This hurts really badly for Viper, though. So, to clear it up for those that may not understand, Hans Mirror in Arabia was the first game, so you can't pick Hans Mirror for your home map. So it's going to be an admin restart. It hurts quite badly that Viper was pretty much winning this one anyways. Maybe they can convince Nilly to continue. I don't think so, and I honestly think that admin decisions shouldn't even be a thing that is on a convince basis. So, yeah. I think that I'm fairly certain that the admin restart was noted right at the beginning of the game. But by the time they actually get this message to Viper and Code, they actually play deep into the game. So if it was said after, let's say, 20 seconds that, hey, this is a wrong save matchup, then it's completely right. Because, yeah, I know, Briss, I know exactly. So I don't blame the admins. I think this is the right decision to make. Because they spotted that this is a wrong civ matchup and immediately contacted the players. But there's a 2-minute spec delay, so the players were already like 4 or 5 minutes in game time, because the 2-minute spec delay is real time. The game time is actual game time. So 2-minute spectator delay means that the players were already at like 5 minutes. By the time the admins were able to see that this is a wrong civ matchup, then they get the message. The players have to even check it out, which often is delayed by the fact that they are, focusing on DM game. And yeah, I think this is the right decision to make. If this is a disallowed civilization matchup, you just gotta call an admin restart, preferably as early as possible. But yeah, this in retrospective hurts Viper quite badly. So, well, it looks like we're gonna have another attempt at game number 6, and it's gonna be 4 lakes again. But 4 lakes with what civ matchup? To me, it seems like Code wants to go for villager snipe heavy civilizations, so I can see something like maybe Lithuanians, Magyars, Frank's Mirror could be very possible, although I don't think that you want to play Frank's Mirror against Viper. Viper just feels the tech switches of Franks so well in DM, so that might be a little bit too ballsy. Are there ever mind games where one player builds a market in a visible place but don't use it? I think I've seen one. It's always hard to judge if it's actually just a fake market to make your opponent feel like, hey, I'm late with my market. Because think about the mind games with this. Let's say I am player 1, you're player 2. Player 1 wants to use a market for his strategy. If he sees a market from player 2 that's already finished, then he might actually stop his own because he says, I don't want to work with the bad market prices. So you can actually use a fake market to deter your opponent from going for an early market strategy. So that is definitely possible. It's always hard to judge though, because sometimes one player makes a market and he's not using it, and it might just be because he's controlling his army and he forgot about it or something like that. So it's very hard to determine if a market that goes up and goes unused to sell resources is just a mistake from a player, or if it's intentional. Because I think it's fairly rare to go for intentional ones, because you commit quite a lot of villager time making that market. That's the biggest thing. That the fake market strategy can work in a situation where there is not a lot of villager sniping to be had. So something like, let's say, Vikings Mirror on Golden Swamp, that's a place where a fake market strategy can work, because then there is not a lot of whale snipes. You will never get it working in a Hunnic Mirror, because while you're building your market, your opponent will be making a stable or an archery range, and he will just come in and kill your wheels. So a fake market needs to have like a slowly escalating or very passive beginning style matchup, I would say. Can the players tell whether the opponent has used the market from prices? They can, but in order to be able to see the prices, you have to have your market up. That's the thing. And like things are happening so fast. Your quick reaction, imagine this, you have half a second to decide if you should make a market. You see that your opponent already has a market. You don't have time to think over, okay, is the market prices out? You have to make a very quick decision. So that's basically it. It's absolutely true that a fake market strategy may not always work, but it's all about the fact that in DM you have to make decisions insanely fast, like in split seconds. And such a sort of diversion or a mind game could be a thing. And it looks like Code actually goes for a very, very non-villager snipe heavy game. This is a massive turnaround. Now, Bristlin, if you are still here, can you confirm me on the fact that this is still Code choosing it? Because this is the direct opposite of what he chose before. I did mention that Inca's Mirror is actually the slowest escalating DM thing. This is the least villager snipe heavy DM setup that you can have. So it is interesting that first Code goes for 100 meters on 4 lakes, which is very villager snipe heavy, and now he goes for a super passive style. Inca's is actually, it's nearly impossible to snipe vills. You open with an archery range, you get 2 slingers out, the opponent's eagle dies, and then it's just slingers onagers. How good am I in Deathmatch? I have a good understanding of Deathmatch. I'm not an expert by any means, so I still have some things that I'm lacking, but I'm starting to get the good grasp of it. I mean, I casted 3 big Deathmatch tournaments already, so I am fairly decent at understanding it. Playing it, I don't play. Like, I am one of the slower players anyways, and DM needs insane speed. To put it into context, Nilly defeated me in an Inca Mirror with without keyboard. Nilly couldn't even shift Q units. Think about it for a moment. Nilly couldn't shift Q buildings, he couldn't shift Q units, and he still clapped me in DM. That's how good I am. So, yeah, I'm bad at DM. I'm just too slow for that. This requires insane APM. Is there no Arena Clown Deathmatch? There is actually Arena Deathmatch. I think Deathmatch World Cup 3 had the arena. I remember, I think it was Mr. Tempo's game I saw. This is, I think, a Portuguese player. I might be confusing him with someone else. But I remember that there was something like that. Something like that. Deathmatch World Cup 3. Let's see if it has the map list. I have seen one Arena Deathmatch game, and it's actually very, very underwhelming because it is just boom into army and snowball the game. Apparently maps are not listed here. So we never know. But Arena Deathmatch is just boring because you have no means of actually gaining any kind of advantage. So why is Inca Mirror so passive? It is passive because you can make an archery range and get a slinger out, and the slinger will kill that eagle really fast, and then the eagles will just get killed by slingers. In fact, Viper actually wants to go for an eagle opening here, which is a dangerous move to have because he wants to snipe vills, but he will be unable to. Nice move. The other reason why it is a so passive opening is because the Inca vills are still tanky. This is the old patch, so they actually receive all the blacksmith upgrades in here. And guess what? That eagle dies to the slinger. In fact, one of the most beginner-friendly deathmatch setups are Incas. You also have 10 housing space per house, so that helps you not get housed. Usually Inca mirrors are all about onagers, slingers, some eagles, maybe some monks overall. Adding Kamayuks makes no sense because there is no cavalry on the field, and against anything else, Kamayuks are just bad. So, we're gonna have castle being attempted over here by the code. This could be good for Viper. I think Viper might have just missed that castle going up. That's huge, because Viper can actually stop this, and Viper sees the castle. This is the playstyle of code that I praise so much. He's playing a fairly aggressive game, and then tries to secure map control as best as he can, and he tried it in here as well, but that's not gonna work. Eagles tried to dive in and snipe the onager, but that's going to be unsuccessful. And it is now full slinger war in this one. For those of you that don't know why slingers, it's fairly simple. Incas can go for basically barracks units. All of those are countered by slingers. or they can go slingers. They can also go for elite skirms, but that's not something that you want to start with. Neither do you want to start with Arbalest, in most cases. Arbalest could be a thing for either side though, because Arbalest would counter slingers quite nicely. Onagers are actually taking the hill here, and Code seems like he's gonna have the chance to drop a castle. Now, Incas can also end in stalemates quite frequently because they have so cheap stone buildings that you can just spam castles everywhere. As, by the way, in this game, it looks like Code was the one with the faster market, so Viper has to work with somewhat underwhelming market prices. Viper, however, taking some shots up hills, gets some slinger kills, and that castle is still just halfway up, but here comes the firing down hills with the onagers, and the Viper's army is getting evaporated here. Still, Viper has more onagers on the field, so Viper might just commit to this one, and it's gonna be a bloody battle for both sides, but Viper feels like he needs to stop this castle from going up. And here are the Kamayuks for whoever was actually missing them, but Kamayuks here are awful. Kamayuks don't do absolutely anything for you. That is the worst possible decision that you can go for, and it's just wasting your villager time building castles for Kamayuks, in comparison to making more ranges for slingers, orbs, or making siege workshops or onagers, siege rams, and Viper seems to take over in this game as well. Onager is now firing down hills as Viper will attempt the castle on this hill. Right side, the Code coming in here with a huge amount of slingers still, and he's still mixing in Kamayuks. Kamayuks will be decent at dealing with the rams, that's absolutely true, but that's basically their only use, and I think Viper lost this castle foundation because there were quite a lot of traps shooting at that castle, and that is probably a castle foundation that's lost. Code seems to be taking over in this game, because the thing is that Code is able to hold this hill and Viper is constantly forced to fight up hills. For a moment it seems like he will seize control over the hill and then everything is gonna be right for Viper, but that sort of seems to disappear now. And Viper tries to secure a hill here on the neutral stone, and he should have the second castle go up as well. This is not something that the Code can stop. Viper also tries to take this hill overall, and he just doesn't have the onagers now. He doesn't have the onagers. Onagers are being brought in, but now these onagers are separated from the rest of the slingers, which means that just one Eagle Warrior could actually destroy 5 of these. Nice 1 for 2 over there for Code, and Code seems to be winning this game, and I cannot wait for the AoE Zone drama thread about the admin restart once, or if Code wins this. Because if Code wins this, then there is gonna be a big drama thread probably about, hey, Viper already won the previous game, but you take it away from him. Well, these are the situations where I'm saying that I'm lucky that I'm not the admin or the host of this tournament. So here come the skirmishers. These skirmishers don't have a minimum range, by the way, thanks to the Andean Sling unique upgrade. So they're actually fairly efficient at picking off those slingers. There's already a drama at Viper stream. I'm not surprised. Like, I think the decision was right, given the circumstances. It's just a matter of, you know, Age of Empires community has a bunch of people that believe that they know the things better than tournament hosts do, and well, sometimes that's not really the case. So now it looks like Code is actually start pushing up here. That's a 1-for-1 onager trade to make it another 1-for-1 overall. And on the right side, we will have Trebs shelling this castle. This castle needs to stay up for Viper. He's got 11 vills repairing against 3 uphills firing Trebs. That's more or less sufficient, or at least it buys some time for Viper. But onagers will actually poke down the rams here. So Code is actually losing this castle, and this is getting a little bit tricky for Code. Because as things stand, Code could lose this forward position and he could get flanked from the other side. Viper is losing a lot of ground here, and this is his primary goal. That's the biggest problem for Viper, and what are we even talking about? Viper is at 20 army and 7 on gold. Other side is 57 on gold for the Code. So it looks like this slower start actually seems to favor our red player here, and maybe it was the right decision to go for the slower start. And look at Code. This is something that Code loves to do. Whenever he secures a forward position in your face, he will start taking your gold. And this is both of Viper's gold mines, so Code doesn't just sit on his lead, he's trying to use every bit of advantage he can grab from it. Viper tries to sneak up a cast on the right side, it looks like Code isn't noticing it just yet. Code at 3 relics, Viper is at 2, and it looks like Viper might try to switch to the right side. Still, Viper's gonna have super limited amount of gold to work with. That's the biggest problem here for the Snake. So, here come the Kamayuks, only to be onagered down by these blue onagers, although, yeah, they didn't onagered down. For a moment it seemed like they can poke down at least one onager, and they will be successful picking off 2. That was a little sloppy from Viper, that's 4 onagers going down to Kamayuks. And now Viper is starting to lose wheels here on this castle to the onagers, the Kamayuks. I am sorry I doubted you, Kamayuks. I still love you. These are so cool units. I mean, Viper now taps out as that castle goes down on the right side. He was successful at getting that castle up, but he probably understands that he's got no protection over this gold mine. And he also lost his 2 gold mines over here. So this was a good GG here for Viper. He was indeed dead. And, well, Kamayuks looking fancy out here in the middle of the combat with the rubble coming in. So it seems like the slower start actually favors Code. And this is an extremely important thing for him to know, although this piece of information may have come a little too late. Because had he known this in game number... wait a second. Yeah, game number 2, that could have been very useful to go for a slower start. And if Viper feels like, hey, a faster start is favoring me, then he's gonna have to go for something like... He can't go for 100 meters, but I think Frank mirrors is something that Viper could be thinking about here. It is going to be his home map and his mirror civilization selection. So, just to reiterate for those that actually missed out on this, what happened is that Code selected Four Lakes Hans Mirror as his home map, which was a not allowed civilization matchup. Because they already played Hans Mirror on Arabia. So the admins, by the time, the admins noticed it immediately after jumping into the game, but because there is spectator delay and because the game is set on fast speed, that was already the middle of the game by the time the players noticed that they need to go for a restart. So the admins decided that there has to be an admin restart because of wrong safe settings in the moment that they realized the error, which was basically when they actually saw the game. But because of the spectator delay, that's mandatory for tournaments, the game was already in the middle stages and Viper was decisively winning. So many people are complaining that, hey, Viper was taken away, or Viper actually lost the game because of that. But that was the right decision to make. That was the appropriate decision to make. Because when the settings are wrong, the admins have to notify the players of an admin win. Or not admin win, but admin restart. But sometimes it's just hard to get to the players because the players focus so much on the game that they're not reading their messages or their chat, especially in Deathmatch, which is so fast-paced. So that is why, by the time they noticed that Viper had a big lead, and yeah, that is because many are complaining that, hey, Viper was winning that game. But that's probably the appropriate admin decision to make. If the settings are wrong, then the players have to be notified immediately and player admin restart. Alright, so it looks like Viper has something different on his mind because he doesn't want a super aggressive start. He wants to go Sicilian mirrors on Arabia. Interesting. So, Arabia, Sicilian mirrors. This is not a villager snipe heavy civilization matchup either. This is one of the more unique ones. When you restart the game, you will notice that both players will delete their scouts. That's going to be the way that the game starts. I actually explained this a couple of times while I was casting DM, but I'm going to do it here because this final is probably going to YouTube. Sicilians build castles very fast. If you commit your villas, your starting 3 villas, to make a castle immediately, and you delete your scout, it takes approximately 2 villagers creation time to make a castle with the villagers you have. And Sicilian castles give population to them, which means that it's easier to delete your scout, keep adding villas, and make that castle for the first 20 population spot instead of building houses. That's sort of a brand new Sicilian build or a type of a thingy. This is the old patch that they're playing on, which means that there is no siege manager for Sicilians here, as we will have the Code on the south and Viper on the north in red and blue respectively. And Viper is actually going for a market strategy here. In this case, I'm not sure if he's not gonna get housed. You see that he deleted his scout. He doesn't have a scout right now. It looks like Code is not going for a scout deletion strategy. Instead, he decides that it's okay for him to get housed. And that's a super early villager forward. I like that decision. The reason why I like this decision is because Sicilian start is super slow, and you know that your opponent won't be pushing you early on because you're going sergeants, right? So sergeants won't really be marching forward that much. You can actually get a castle up here, and it looks like Viper wants to dungeon drop this hill here. There is already sergeants coming from both sides. Viper ends up with a market, and in comparison, we'll have Cavalier for the Code. I am not so sure if the Cavalier will actually work nicely here. They will have the mobility advantage, but it only works if Code can snipe whales with it. But if Code can snipe whales, he can secure a nice advantage, and we did mention that the way for Code to win this set is to establish an early advantage through whale snipes, for example, and just build on that advantage that he's having heavy scorpions being added. Since Sicilians don't have siege manager in this version of the game, heavy scorpions are a much more viable unit to play with. So champs now out for the Code. Champions is basically a more gold efficient version of the Sergeant here, but obviously slightly weaker as well because of the lack of melee armor. And Viper, those crabs will be going down really easily here. Viper is also making in a couple of Cavaliers, gets the castle on this hill. But I feel like Code start is actually slightly better over here, which, given the fact that Viper has a front gold and double front stones, is actually going to be pretty decisive advantage, I would say. So maybe the market gamble didn't pay off for Viper, because as things stand, that market delayed him from making additional production buildings quite heavily, and that's probably the reason why he's behind in military numbers. Nice move from the Viper to use the Cavalier against the Scorpions. Now Viper shelling that castle with one trap. Military numbers are still better for Code. He's out of gold already though. He has 31 sergeants queued up, 7 Cavalier, 14 champions, and quite a lot of light cav in as well. So he wants to go for super early light cav to try and snipe siege weapons. After the 5 TCs have been completed by the players, you will see an immediate First Crusade from both players, because First Crusade caps out at 5 town centers, so you want to pop it when you are up to 5. Now here it comes, another trap could be sniped down over here from the Code. Viper indeed focuses that one down. It looks like this Onager was also ground attacking his own units, but look at Viper. He's got quite a lot of idols in this one because he's getting pushed over here in the front. 106 army against 40, and I just don't think that in a Sicilian mirror you can actually afford to go for market, because you can get overrun so easily. They don't have First Crusade or the Resurgent Deathmatch, that's correct. Burgundian Vineyards, Flemish Revolution, First Crusade, these are technologies that are not researched in DM automatically. So you see First Crusade coming in here for Viper, and First Crusade on the way as well for the Code. When you have 5 TCs, you gotta go for that. And the Code already shelling the castle here from Viper on the right side, who is adding these very underwhelming Sicilian Arbs. They're not awful, but I mean, they don't have tumbling, they don't have +4 defense. Sergeant's diving in now on the Onagers. A little bit of a sloppiness there from Code protecting his siege, and overall, Code is very sloppy protecting his siege right now. So I have to say that he's just giving too much opportunities for Viper to kill expensive siege weapons, which is not something that he can afford. The sergeants should assemble soon. Here comes the first crusade from both sides. Viper is able to keep this castle alive and keep this one alive most likely as well, with the Onager finishing off the trebs. So Code had a rough time protecting his siege weapons, and he's gonna pay the price for it, because Viper will be able to keep both of these important castles up. And now Viper might actually try to loop around with a couple of orbs, try to pick off some wheels. Code actually transitioned to the next stage of the game a little bit better, has slightly higher eco, as the Onager hits are actually decimating the numbers of the Code. 46-44 is the military count, population slightly in the favor of Code. But as I said, a couple of orbs here and sergeants from Viper could actually open up a new front line on the right side. Castle coming up real quick over here by the Code to protect his remaining base. And I think that now Viper is gonna start pushing this castle that's only like half HP. Viper not repairing this castle. Viper is actually out of stone, but this is a beautiful castle from the Snake protecting this neutral gold mine. As things stand, both players are on one relic, so both of them started picking up relics. Two of the relics are on the far right side, so it's going to be a little bit harder for either of these players to pick up. And Code is just trying to consume this gold mine before he loses control over this portion of the map. Wouldn't dungeons be better than castles to spam sergeants? Yes, they are. But castles allow you to make trebs as well, and castles allow you to control the map a lot better. So dungeons are better for just pure production, but castles give you a lot of map control and the ability to go for trebs as well. So it's going to be still an Onager on the hill here for the Code, but I just feel like his army is just not... He doesn't have army, actually. We are talking about 24 sergeants, 4 halberdiers, and just a couple of Onagers. Viper doesn't have a huge army either, so it looks like both of these players gonna stall out in production and just go for the eco. Population is looking way better though for our red player, but I'm massively against the fact that Code is just using a couple of rams here without major military production. You see that there was a couple of sergeants escorting these rams, but by the time they got there, the Onagers just decimated the sergeants, and suddenly there is basically zero protection to these rams. They can be lucky if they take down 2 Onagers here, I have to say. They actually will be able to take down 2, maybe even some more. Viper could actually trap this castle down. The ram wasn't able to reach the trap, and Viper will be able to finish this castle. Beautiful collapse model on Definitive Edition, by the way. On the right side, Viper is gonna lose his trap, but he does so after taking down the TCs and I think a castle here as well for the Code. Code actually now has quite a lot of Scorpions, but once again, he doesn't really have a defense against just pure Cavalier. If Viper sends in free Cavalier here, those Scorpions are all history. Viper yoinking the relic from the far right, that would make it 3 relics for him. He already has 2 picked up. And Code's push seems scary, but I feel like he just doesn't have the escort for the siege weapons, and exactly this is what's gonna happen. A couple of Cavalier jump on them, and all those expensive siege weapons go down without getting any major profit from them. Viper trying a castle here on the far right to besiege this one from Code. This is the other neutral gold mine on the map, so whoever controls that is going to have a massive advantage over the opponent, especially if that's Viper, because Viper already has one of his neutral, or one of the neutral gold mines under his control. These sergeants are actually doing quite a lot of damage here to Viper's base, and Viper is only 150 population, whereas Code is 200 pop. Now, army numbers are not that much better for Code, but the eco is slightly better, and for what it takes, the army numbers are also slightly better for Code. So this game is not decided just yet. You see that the score keeps flipping. But as things stand, I think Viper might be in a slightly better spot. He's got 4 relics overall, I think a significant portion of the map under his control, and he's now pushing this castle with rams. Luckily there is sergeants that can be made on the castles, and sergeants destroy rams fairly easily, so when you have a castle that produces a melee type unique unit, like sergeants for example, or I don't know, boyars, you can't just go for a couple of rams to take it down. If this was a castle that produces something like Conquistadors, siege ram push would be enough because the conks themselves can take down the rams. But melee units will be able to, so you can't just go for siege rams on a castle without escort, unless you actually assume that your opponent won't be able to react because you distract him. But that wasn't the case there. Code reacted nicely. And I have to say that Viper's population is actually pretty scary. Because one thing Viper doesn't have is food eco. Only 20 on food for Viper, compared that to Code. He's got 60 on food. And that 60 on food allows him to either sell some of it for some reasonable amount of gold. The price is still 42 gold for 100 food. And more importantly, as Viper is now forced to pull villagers to fight this trap, you know that Viper is gonna be in trouble if he's fighting a trap with vills. And Viper doesn't have a huge amount of stone either to repair those castles. That's a very, very sloppy play there from Code to allow that trap to go down. But I feel like the only thing that now favors Viper is actually the relic count. Everything else seems to be a lot more concerning for him than it is for the Code, because his primary gold is exposed, the stone mine is exposed as well. Luckily for Viper, he was able to mine the majority of his gold, but I would say that, you see, Viper is... Oh, look at this! Look at this beautiful duality. Viper is out of food, so he has to buy food, whereas Code has 63 on food, so he wants to sell food. I feel like Code just increased his advantage even more so, because Viper is forced to buy food, which increases the prices, and that allows Code to sell at a much better rate and just continue pressing on and crippling Viper's food eco. It very much seems like Viper is going to lose 3 in a row here, because now the momentum is all in the hands of Code, steadily at 190, 200 population, as opposed to his opponent, who is basically 112 population, and he hasn't gone over 125 for quite a while. So now it's going to be some sergeants coming in here to do some raiding. They won't do much in the castle fire. Speaking of castle fire, on the right side we have Trap from Code firing up hills against that castle. Viper will dispatch the cavalry to get rid of that trebuchet. Viper is now switching fully into Arbalest, and that's something that's a little bit tough to fight against, although heavy scorpions and onagers can actually make that happen. Viper making a stand here as he traps down the castle of the opponent. Right side, as I said, the traps are going down, and Code could also lose quite a lot of gold miners here in this one. The siege rams will still reach the trap though, and one thing to point out is that sergeants are actually pretty decent against Arbs. Like, the Arbs do 10 damage and sergeants have 8 pierce armor, so a lot of sergeants is actually hard to stop with Arbalest, especially when those Arbalests do not have Thumb Ring. And we did talk about the fact that Viper, he's running out of gold. Code still has about a couple thousand, probably around the 1,000 to mine. Viper still has some gold to mine over here, but he's gonna have to get there first. And I'm not sure if he's gonna be able to. Viper still keeps this castle alive, and the trap will survive as well. The next wave of light cap will deal with that trebuchet, as Code just beautifully onagered down his own units. Right side the castle is still standing, but as I said, Code will just send in light cav and that's gonna go down. And most importantly, as I said, in the middle, Code is starting to push up Viper's base. This is the monastery that Viper has all 4 relics in, and that's where things get really scary. A nice move once again from Viper to snipe down the siege weapons. Overall, Code is having a hard time protecting his siege engines in this one. This is the older patch. This is why you don't see Siege Onager for Sicilians. That's a good question. I think I mentioned this already though. So now the first castle goes down, and if this monastery goes down, suddenly the only advantage that Viper really had is going to disappear as well. We will have villagers chasing down these remaining sergeants. Viper is at 122 population, and that hasn't increased for the last 5 or so minutes game time. Whereas Code is still 180 pop, slowly grinding down Viper's base, although I have to say that Code is not necessarily taking very cost-efficient fights by any means, so he's losing way too many expensive siege weapons to just small groups of units, but I feel like this is going to be similar to Kuman's game. Now, all that Code needs to do is just raid Viper's food eco, because Viper is going to be out of gold soon. You just want to cripple Viper's food eco, because then he's not gonna be able to add meat shield in front of those arbalasts. This castle is still standing for Viper, which is extremely important. He needs to protect this gold mine for a little more time. And there's an overchop here for Viper, so those light caps could actually run into the base of the opponent. More importantly, if you will only have arbalasts, then siege rams will actually eat your buildings. And I think Code can soon start thinking about sending the villagers in here on the gold mine and the stone mine. And as I was saying that he dropped that foundation. So he will try to steal as much gold as he can from Viper. The stone might be even more so valuable here because you can drop a couple of donjons thanks to that. Viper, however, launches a counterattack with the siege rams, and he still has some light cap to deal with the skirmishers that are coming out now for Code. Now, Sicilian skirms actually clap, or Sicilian skirms are actually clapped by Arbs because they're lacking +4 defense, and that's so important for the skirmishers. This is going to be a hard hold here for Code. He's got 2 castles, a couple of light cavalry to deal with the ram push in here. He's trying to keep that trap alive until he takes this castle down, but I think Code still keeps the trap alive. This is so big. The repair villagers are coming in here, and Viper is not looking. Viper is not focusing down those vills. Viper runs out of stone and loses that castle. That is enormous. That is enormous, and now the right side castle also goes down. I think Viper was looking there, and the right side of Viper's base is just wide open for raiding, and the elite skirms are now coming in to destroy what remains of Viper's army of Arbs. And now it's all about, I think you can actually focus down the castles right now, but the next thing to do is going to be focusing down the monastery. Viper actually wants to escort the relics. He's got 3 in here, and I think he wants to transfer those from here to here. But at this point, Viper is 30 army, his opponent is 48. Overall, Viper, as I said, is at like a steady 130 eco, or 130 population, whereas his opponent is around 180 most of the time. And as I said, Code is even going to steal some gold away here from the Viper. Those are small details, but those are things that make Code a very, very good deathmatch player overall. But yeah, the Skirm actually have a tough time here against the Arbs, because the Sicilian Arbs take less bonus damage from the Skirms, and also the Skirmishers do not have +4 defense, so I think that Sicilian Arbs might even beat their own Skirmishers in a mirror. That's actually crazy. The gold efficiency will still be on the side of the Skirmishers, but it's not like Skirms will clap the Arbs here as easily as you would think. Some sergeants still marching around in Viper's base, still 125 population. Army value is not that big of an advantage though for Code, so I'm afraid we might once again have another big stalemate here. Code firm lead in terms of score, but look at all this potential raidable food eco. If this dungeon goes down, Viper is gonna have like, what, 50 farms here that's wide open for raiding. And it's not like Viper has the resources to really scramble combat units that can deal with this. He can make a couple of sergeants, maybe even a couple of hubs, but Viper is at the bare minimum of resources, whereas if you compare him to Code, Code is actually amassing quite a lot of resources. Viper is down to 80 vills, and that wouldn't necessarily be a problem by itself if he had a huge army, but he doesn't have a huge army, and I just feel like Viper's food income here will not be sufficient to replenish any units. It's not over completely, but it looks very, very grim right now for Viper. And I think Code is doing the right thing. Just keep sending in wave after wave of light cav and just completely annihilate Viper's food eco. And indeed, before the next onager hit would connect, Code takes game number 7 here. And reverse sweep in the making. I did mention, I think, after the very long game that Code has won, that attrition could be a factor for both players. It seems like attrition is impacting Viper a little bit more because he's not so dominant as he was in the first couple of games. And now Code, 3 in a row. This is a best of 11. So, but this is actually something that gives the confidence back for Code. And that's extremely important, that he no longer feels like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna get 4-0'd here, or well, 6-0'd. He feels like, okay, I have a shot at this. And realistically speaking, if Code continues to play on this level, then he has a shot at winning this. So now we will go to preset maps from this point on, this is going to be just preset maps, and let's talk about the fact that this was Viper's home map and Civ selection, so it gives a massive motivation for Code that he was able to take away a home map from Viper, and he did so with the Civilization matchup that Viper has chosen. And now, we will go to preset Civilization matchup. Koreans on Acropolis, I think that's something that Code has a pretty decent chance at. Gods Four Lakes is something I would favor Viper at. Ghost Lake Vikings could be Code-sided, and Frank Serengeti could be Viper-sided. Those are the ones that remain. So, with that, let's take a look at the next lobby. No lobbies just yet. I'm gonna go back to the game so you see what's up. Apparently the players are probably taking a couple of minutes of break after these long games. Viper probably wants to clear his head as well, because the thing is that he has just lost 3 in a row, so he probably needs to stand up, you know, take a drink or something, relax a little bit, and then come back rejuvenated, so to say. So I can understand if he takes a bit of a break here. This series has actually started to deliver after the initial stomp, I have to say. So, let's take a look at the next map. That is, as I said, going to be Acropolis Korean Mirror. Acropolis is the typical slow-paced map control type game that Code loves to play. And that should actually make him favored in this one. So don't be deceived by the fact that you don't be deceived by the fact that you still see Sicilians. This is a great tongue twister. Still see Sicilians. Try to say that out quick. Still see Sicilians. So, yeah, it's going to be Acropolis Korean Mirrors according to the rules. And Yo Sheep, hello, welcome. So, Korean Mirrors is going to open with some cavalry, but it's probably going to be more like get a couple of halberdiers out, get your castles up with war wagons, and then start dropping towers all across the map. So, especially securing the middle, like the lake area, with a couple of those Korean towers could be enough to swing the battle in your favor. Oh, that's another good tongue twister. So, shall she still see Sicilians? I can't do that. So, shall she... So, shall she still see Sicilians? Oh. She sells She sells Sicilian seashells by the seashore. Okay, let's stop this because I'm just going to embarrass myself. Okay. So, no game up just yet. Code is the host. We're waiting for a Viper, I assume, to select his civilization. He kind of needs to win now, at least one game. Yeah, Viper is AFK, so that is why the game hasn't started yet. As I said, I think after losing 3 in a row, you probably want to clear your head and sort of start with a clean sheet over here. He also hasn't been in bathroom or something like that for 2 or 3 hours, so it makes some sense to do that. Do you get to see the save the other players picking? Normally in tournaments you do not, but this tournament there are preset civilizations. So for example, game number 8 is going to be Acropolis with Koreans for both players. So in that case, you can actually see what your opponent is picking because you know exactly it's going to be Korean mirrors. But in most tournaments, it's hidden because obviously that would give an advantage for you with selecting Civ knowing what the opponent picks. But it's going to be Mirror Civ for the remaining games. Most of the Deathmatch tournaments are played in a Mirror Civilization setup. So there's very few exceptions. In fact, it was a massive surprise for many people that Deathmatch World Cup 4 actually has had some games with non-mirror civs. Usually Deathmatch is always mirror. And the remaining games will also be full mirror. Koreans already in for Viper, so we're just waiting for code to switch from Sicilians to Koreans. Oh, this could also be a big stalemate. I feel this could be a long game. Because the Korean towers will just give you so much map control, and then bombard cannons will be sufficient to just snap down the opponent's trebs. I have a feeling that we could be in for a long game here. In general, Acropolis can last quite long, but when you actually have your base and overall your map fortified with Korean towers, that could result in extremely long games. Alright, here we go. Wait a second. Did they... I think they messed this up. Yeah, they messed up the map selection. So, don't be deceived. The rules actually say Acropolis, Korean Mirror. This says Arabia, Korean Mirror. So, expect a restart to occur in the next couple of moments. So, yeah, don't be surprised about that. We're not gonna play Arabia, Korean Mirrors, because the rules say it's Acropolis. Did they mess it up once already? Yeah, I remember that they messed up Acropolis to Arabia once already. Did we have an Acropolis game? I'm starting to forget things. Oh yeah, the Acropolis game. Oh, I see. I remember the crazy Acropolis game for the Viper with Japanese and Tatars. Oh, that was a better start for Code. But then Viper was able to snowball it. I feel like we can't actually jump to any conclusions from that defeat for Code in that map. But as I said, it doesn't matter, because this is going to be Arabia, and unless the settings are posted wrong, which could be possible, then we should have Acropolis here. Yeah, it's gonna be Acropolis. As you could see, the countdown didn't end and the game actually launched. When that happens, that means that the game actually didn't get to the stage where the spec delay starts mattering. So you see immediately they are gonna have to restart because, believe it or not, they haven't gone for the appropriate map. Okay, now they restarted already, so 1:35 to wait. The last time that they messed up the map selection for Acropolis, Viper actually made an insane comeback. So we will see if he can replicate that once again. He kind of needs a win now, I feel like, for his morale, because it would be sort of disappointing for him if he were up 4 games and then suddenly his opponent wins 4 in a row and it's an even score. So, yeah, I think at this point, the player that has the most to lose in this game is Viper. Because if Code loses, he's still going to say, okay, 5-3, not ideal, but we're still in this one. Whereas on the other side, if you think about it, then... so if Code wins, then it's going to be an even score. So Viper has more to lose here because he doesn't want to even out the score after winning 4-0 in basically the first segment of this set. I don't need to be a psychic to predict that there is going to be a restart. All I have to look at is the rulebook. So you don't see that, but on my other screen I have the rulebook open. So I know that it's going to be Korean's Acropolis, and when it's not Acropolis but Arabia, then it's gotta be a restart. So that's how you know that it's gotta be a restart. Alright, so the time is up. We can jump into the next game over here, especially if Capture Age is willing to cooperate, which it gladly does. we will have the code as red on the left side. Right side is going to be the Viper as Koreans in blue. Korean mirrors, as I said, is not very villager snipe heavy, which should technically favor code. You see, you open one Halberdier because you want to kill that initial light cav that comes your way. That's actually very underwhelming Hussar, by the way, just +2/+2 on them. And then you go for like champion, Halberdier, and onager composition, as long as you don't get your castle up for war wagons. But it looks like Viper, rejuvenated after the break, picks off the will at the beginning. So that's an excellent start once again for Viper. And as I said, this Civilization matchup, Korean Mirrors, is not villager snipe heavy. So every single will that you kill is going to matter so much, because your opponent has very little chance to retaliate for that. And it very much seems like Code will be unable to pick off a will. That's a nice start for Viper, who still has his scout around. I just jinxed him so badly. I said he's got his scout around, and that just got absolutely massacred by that Halberdier. And Cav Archers. Now that is not very common in Korean Mirrors by any means. You see that, for example, the code is going for onagers and champions. But here it is. Cav Archers. Now, Korean Cav Archers are comparable to like a half pile of junk, because the thing is that they do not have +6 defense. The bigger thing, though, is that they are lacking bloodlines, I believe. They gotta lack bloodlines. I'll have to double check, but I think they're lacking bloodlines. Those should be 80 HP heavy CAs. So yeah, Koreans don't have bloodlines. So those are some very underwhelming Cav Archers. Doubt has shown in Red Bull 3 that Cav Archers can still do magic, but guess what? Viper is at 4 will kills. This is exactly what Viper is adding Cav Archers. He doesn't need to use them as a combat unit, he needs to use them as a will snipe unit. And that role can be filled in very nicely as Code tries to sneak a tower rip up here on Viper's face. I think Viper might actually notice that, and indeed he does. Code already lost 8 villagers in this one, and this is exactly what Viper is making the Cav Archers for. He doesn't want to use them in combat. Oh my goodness, Viper with the bait! He just basically had his Cav Archers run towards the onagers while being chased by the swordsman, and Code results in just onagering down his own swordsman, and Viper diving in once again. Viper killed 15 wills. This game is over. I mean, there is absolutely zero chance here for Code. He's down to 2 wills as opposed to 19. How are you even going to stop the next wave from Viper? I have absolutely no idea. Because Viper is gonna bring in war wagons and you will have zero answer for that. 3 wills only for Code. I doubted the Korean Cav Archers because I thought Viper is gonna go for a lot of them and just try to use them as a combat unit. But actually for a villager snipe unit it's great, and 15 will kills to 1 is not something that you can overcome in Deathmatch. So that is just impossible to overcome. In fact, you see that Code is barely able to finish his first castle. Viper is already up with 2 castles, dropping TCs. When you lose that many villas, your expansion on the map, your economical expansion as well, will just be so severely damaged that it's next to impossible to come back from it. Viper's gonna trade onagers in the middle and lets his swordsman die by the opponent's onagers. Still, one thing that Viper doesn't really have is, you know, the killing blow right now, but I think the population clearly illustrates why Viper is ahead, and this will be a very convincing and decisive win for Viper, in fact. And look at Viper, he's even trying to convert this will here, which either decides to die to the swordsman or just gets converted. Code chooses the first option, and he loses that will. Code is still at 60 pop, Viper is almost pop capped, and I mean, Code is on a lot of onagers. But in this case, Viper could actually add at least a couple of Cavaliers or Light Cav, because that would annihilate this entire thing. Or Bombard Cannons could also work. Viper also the first one to get a market up, thanks to the fact that he just delayed Code so much. This is not going to be a close game, I will believe. Or more likely, it shouldn't be a close game because Viper should have a massive advantage. Now, mistakes like this are not acceptable for Viper if he wants to win this one, though. That's a lot of war wagons that go down to the onagers. But still, the idea for Viper is that right now he killed so many villas that he can just snowball the game, And he brings in some more cav archers in this one. Code trying to secure the middle with some towers. But once again, another wheel could bite dust here. And I mean, it's still just 12 wheels for the Code. His army is just non-existent either. So, other side, Viper actually closed the distance with the champions, takes down a couple of war wagons. I have to say that Viper's start here was insane, but after that he's playing, disgustingly passive. He could just finish this game. I don't blame him for just playing super passive, because he just wants to build on his advantage, and I think Viper knows that he won this game. He has to know. Turtle ships are not completely a meme here, because technically they're legitimate to control the middle and, protect those gold mines. But come on, man. It's like a half meme from Viper here. Turtle ships coming in here. So I like the Hussar edition, because that's going to decide, or that's going to just be able to massacre those onagers. And you see that even just this little Hussar with the somewhat underwhelming upgrades on it is going to be able to do quite a lot of damage. And now the war wagons from Viper will start marching up. And look at this. I think this was Viper's onager. This had to be Viper's onager here, trying to chop down the trees. I think Viper is just playing a very, very slow map control game now. He knows exactly that his opponent isn't actually able to control a significant portion of the map, and there is no wood on this ridge that you start with. So I guess the idea is that he just wants to deny all accessible wood from his opponent. Turtle ships now get stepped down by the halberdiers, as Viper already solidified the middle with a couple of towers that also have 13 range thanks to the unique upgrade called Upsong. And turtle ships actually do quite decent damage against onagers. Viper now adding a couple of galleons in here as well. Miguel, thanks for the raid. I appreciate that a lot. We're casting Deathmatch World Cup 4 Grand Finals. We have Viper winning by 1 game so far in a best of 11 versus the Code. And this game, Acropolis Korean Mirror, seems to be heavily in the favor of Viper. Viper is pop-capped, and Code isn't. Like, Code isn't even remotely close to being pop-capped, to be precise. Other side, champions are now coming in here for Viper. He's going to eat quite a lot of onager shots overall, though. And indeed, this might not have been the best engagement ever for Viper. Still, he's got a so big lead that he might just be able to afford this one to be taken. And he takes down the majority of the onagers. And on the left side, as I said, Viper sends an onager in here and he's intentionally chopping down the wood lines. Because he wants to make sure his opponent doesn't have any access to wood. And that so far seems to be a successful strategy for him. And he will just try to starve his opponent out of resources entirely. Still making a couple of cav archers over here on the left side as a way to deal with the halberdiers. And as I said, these cav archers are alright as long as you only have to fight against melee units, because they lack pierce armor, they lack HP, so that hurts against range units, but against melee units they are perfectly fine overall. And look at Viper just chopping down all the trees. He's just going to make sure that, okay, you have the lead, and he just wants to retain that lead as long as possible. He doesn't want to go for a super aggro, finish off the opponent type of play. Just wants to play slow, sit back a little bit, think about the upcoming games. He's got triple the army value right now. He's got double the villager count, way higher army number as well. He's on 3 licks as opposed to 2, and his opponent will soon have no wood income because Viper is just working on chopping down the trees with onagers. Still, I feel like Viper, given the fact that at some point he was 25-0 or 1 villager, I think he could have finished this game off a little bit faster. It's not like I'm blaming him for it, because he has the big lead and he just wanted to make sure he plays safe and doesn't throw it away. However, I think that if he plays a little bit more aggressively, then he could have already finished this game and we could be in at game number 9. Still, now War Wagon's pushing up for Viper. And you see that all he's working on is just chopping down these wood lines. There is still some more to work with, but Viper is already bringing the onagers, and I can tell you this onager is probably meant to take down this wood line. And the onager, indeed. Viper already coming in, and is he gonna take a shot on the wood lines? He definitely should, because This way, you can really limit the amount of wood that's going to be available for Code. He still has a bit of a resource bank, but you see that Code is already having trouble with wood. As Viper also has some elite cannon galleons in the middle to take down the towers for him. And I see a couple of rams being assembled as well. Nice little unit composition of galleons, turtle ships, cannon galleons, siege onagers, and so Viper is just going to take down all these forests and then just wait until his opponent runs out of resources. Like, that's gonna be a thing. That Viper is gonna have a so much bigger resource bank that Code is gonna have nothing to do. In fact, I'm heavily surprised that Code hasn't resigned when he got pushed down to one villager, because at that time it was fairly obvious that he's going to surrender all map control to Viper, who will be faster building castles here. This trap is gonna be saved for the Viper for the time being, as the towers are slowly going down. And you see that, like, Code is already forced to take these wood lines, so he's already running out of wood, and Viper sees this as well. And I would be massively surprised if Viper didn't attempt to chop these trees down as well. In here. Cannon Galleons now are out, and Cannon Galleons, boom, yoinking a War Wagon. A rare sight to see Cannon Galleons destroying War Wagons. But as things stand, even these champions raiding the wood line of Code is just doubly annoying. Because the thing is that this Siege Onager is actually just going to accidentally chop down the trees while shooting at the champions. And Viper even has some monks here to accompany the war wagons and heal them up. Left side, it's actually going to be a ram push, but it's mostly just an onager fight. I'm not going to say I really dislike the way that Viper is playing this one, because it's just somewhat, you know, boring. But on the other hand, he is winning this game, and he just wants to make sure he doesn't throw this. As I said, this is an important game for him, so I cannot really blame him for doing this. It's just a matter of that this is not necessarily a spectacular game. This is more like waiting for Viper to decide if he wants to commit to this or just chop down the trees of the opponent and just wait until Code runs out of resources. Viper actually selling wood and food at some somewhat underwhelming prices, but still, he used the market while the prices weren't completely bottomed out. In fact, the only player to use the market so far was Viper, as you see the logs on the left side. He still hasn't started mining this gold mine, which is something that he will need, just now dropping a wall of towers in here, and that's going to be, I think, a 2 for 2 over there. That's going to be an uphill. What happened to this trap? What happened to this guy here? I completely missed out on that. Still, Viper's got the relic lead, Viper's got the map control lead, and as I said, soon Code is gonna have issues with wood control. The tower finished off the onager. Was it that weak? I didn't even see that being that weak, as now Viper is just going to send in his war wagons against the towers. Look at that many siege onagers for Viper. As he splits away, siege onagers will just melt those towers as well. And like, those halberdiers will just be caught here in the crossfire. Some of them will actually reach the halberdiers, but Viper will be able to destroy them before they do any damage. So now you see that Code is trying to make some more towers in here with hills, but he just has nowhere to go. This game is so over. Viper, oh, look at this. Even Hussar coming in. These Hussar are awful. They don't have bloodlines. +4/+4 is missing, but he's still killing quite a lot of vills. Code is stuck at like 170 population, but the bigger deal is that how is Code going to win this game? He's going to run out of wood in the next couple of minutes, because that's the only forest that he can legitimately take. Everything else has been chopped down away from him, and Viper is just sitting on a huge amount of gold. In fact, Viper even has towers in here, so Viper could technically deny that gold mine, as Code is getting a couple more defensive towers up to protect the back of his eco. And this win would actually move Viper into match point. So after 3 in a row for Code, Viper could break that streak and start marching towards another Deathmatch World Champion title. Onagers are still out here for Code, but I feel like, as I said, this game seems to be very much like a matter of when and not a matter of who. As Code is at 27 army against 57, 125 population against 176, with basically little to no wood control, little to no map control. There is just nowhere to go here for Code. And now the War Wagons will start diving in, start killing Wills here. Code's eco is just dead, so to say. And he has still a huge amount of gold to work with, and he's got a reasonable wood bank. But Viper obviously will have way more resources to play with. So Viper can afford to throw away units just to make sure that Code cannot actually access the rest of the map. Viper's cannon galleons are also doing work here, like taking down these lumber camps, which are starting to be expensive for the Code, if you consider the fact that he's out of wood. And I feel like the GG should soon be called, because wherever I look, Viper is stomping his opponent here. Like, Code is trying to get some gold mining done here, or maybe even some lumberjacking, but there's barely anything that he can do on this side. And I also love how Viper is chopping this wood line with the Wills. It's not like he is undercutting this, but he wants to steal these from his opponent, and you see that he, for example, preserves some of the wood lines on his side. So instead of chopping like this, for example, he's chopping this. This way he can take some resources away from the opponent. It looks like Code has enough resources for one final push, and it's going to be a good push, but insufficient to get any kind of advantage for him. Like, you see that he's pushing up here, but is he going to be able to control any of the resources? No, not at all. So that is probably going to be the end for Code here. Viper, once again returning to his Codebreaker form, he moves into match point in this best of 11. The reason why there is a TC here is because there was a gold mine spawning here for Code. So this is actually a nice TC. It was protecting a gold mine. But yeah, this game was decided here. That one villager remaining from Code, and it's over. You see that Viper never dropped below a certain threshold of units, whereas Code was never able to replenish his army because he had zero map control. This is the moment where Viper just secures all map control, and from that point on, Code was unable to access resources. So with that, Viper takes game number 8, and game number 9 could be the last one in the tournament, because, believe it or not, the last game in a tournament, if Viper wins this map, Viper still needs to win, and we are going in terms of settings to 4 Lakes Gods though. And I did mention that I think Korean's Acropolis is something that's a little bit slower paced, and that should help Code. Gods is a very fast paced start, so that should favor Viper, I believe, from what we have seen. Vikings Ghost Lake in game number 10 is something that I once again think that would favor Code, but against all odds, Code is gonna have to take a win here on 4 Lakes, Gothic Mirrors. Otherwise, I just don't know. Well, if he doesn't take the win, it doesn't matter, but it's going to be awfully hard for him to pull that win off, because against Viper, who is just so good at their macro, the villager snipes went so well for Viper in previous games as well. Gods seems like a tough one to crack. Especially because if you remember the Khmer versus Vietnamese game, Viper actually had a very nice control over his Scorpions. And Gothic Mirrors often incorporate Scorpions as well. So one of the other reasons why this could be so good for Viper is because he's just going to be able to use the Scorpions probably slightly better than Code will, although Code was very, very skillful at sniping those siege weapons in the first game he has won. Okay, so Aztec? What? What? What is that Aztec's pick? The rules say game number 9, Goths, 4 Lakes. I see Acropolis, Aztecs. Why? Okay, 4 Lakes. Okay, now it's Goths. So Apparently, the rulebook is always right. They will launch the game in a matter of moments. And we will jump into game number... How much? It's game number 10, right? No, game number 9. Viper is leading 5-3 right now. And I just need to restart my capture age because it really doesn't like deathmatch that much. Get it? Deathmatch that much? Badum. Alright, so we got 2 minutes from the countdown. How do you win this if you're code? You have to kill more vills than your opponent does. It's easier said than done, though. It's way easier said than done. So this is gonna be a rough one for code, I'm not gonna lie. It's actually going to be extremely challenging at... Like, that's the nicest thing I can say, that it's gonna be extremely challenging for him to pull this one off. So, Gothic meter is usually open with one halberdier to deal with the opponent's hussar that comes in. Then you go for a couple of huskars. And after that, it's probably going to be champion, scorpion, bombard cannon type of a strategy, with occasional huskars being mixed in to snipe siege weapons, get some raiding damage done. I think that the big deal for Code is that he needs to survive the first 5 minutes of the game. We could see market strategy for either of the players, especially because this is 4 lakes. Because with gods, you don't really want to sell a lot of your food, because gods are very food heavy in that match. But on 4 lakes, you can actually justify that a tiny bit if you will add docks quite early and add fishing eco to compensate for that. So that's one way to do things on 4 lakes. So we will jump back into Deathmatch World Cup 4. And match point. Viper, 1 game away from once again becoming the Deathmatch World Cup champion. He actually won 5-0 against the Code in Deathmatch World Cup 3. This time that's not gonna happen because he's already lost 3 games, but he can still win this one very easily. He just needs one very good game for this one, as we will have Viper on the left side in blue and right side will be the Code in red. And that is going to be indeed the Halberdiers opening, followed up by the Huskars. That's the standard way of doing things, and Code yoinks the first Villager away from Viper. That's a nice start from him. Viper, on the other hand, unable to get a Will pick. So that's the type of start that Code wants to have. Obviously, the first Villager kill may not be sufficient entirely, because the real danger is when the Huskars start closing in, but the start was actually slightly better over here for our red player, the Code. Viper going for early siege workshops for the Scorpions, and it looks like he's going to play a fairly defensive-orientated game here, tries to quick wall his Wills as much as possible. Viper comes in with the Huskars on the left flank. There is not a lot of villagers to kill, but he also sends a couple to the right, as Code yoinks a second villager away from Viper. That's a very nice start for the Code, but that is Viper coming in and sniping no Wills. This is an excellent start, I have to say, for Code, until Viper actually starts appearing with some more units and starts killing Wills. Now it's a 4-2 KD on the villagers, and what was an amazing start for Code no longer is. It's 4-3 in terms of Will KD, not the end of the world for Code, but somewhat insufficient for him to gain an advantage. In fact, Viper is in the driver's seat of this one, and Viper is doing a nice job just sending a couple of these Huskars around if he can find some more Wills here. Market coming in. For Code, Viper apparently is not going for a market strategy. He's just going to play heavy Scorpions entirely. That's an earlier Scorpion play than his opponent, as you see that Code is just now adding workshops. And that's 2 villagers that are super exposed here. This would be a disaster for Code. This would be a disaster. That's 2 wills going down, and Viper is now at 8 villager kills and only 3 losses. There might be a couple of wills killed as a retaliation here, and indeed Code comes in with those, makes it 1, makes it 2. But the big thing is that the siege workshops are delayed for Code right now, which allows Viper to start adding Scorpions, although Viper now is housed thanks to the fact that he lost so many vills. Still, Scorpions are now out for Viper, which means that those champions will have a hard time. Left side, Viper is still adding the houses, but he's severely housed over here because I think the vills that he lost over here on the left side, those were the housing vills. And now we got some Scorpions out as well from the Code. Code's army numbers actually seem to be a little bit more convincing, and after all, despite the fact that Viper killed 8 vills and only lost 5, he actually isn't able to deal that much damage to Code here. So Code is pretty much in this game, especially with Viper. Actually, this is a good fight for Viper here. Code is the one selling the resources on the market though, so he's gonna be able to sustain this level of production for a lot longer. Viper apparently didn't bother with the market usage up until now, and you see that by the time Viper gets the market up, it's too late, and he loses another Vil here, so Vil KD is now dead even. Neither of the players able to expand their eco at the pace they wanted to, but I feel like Code has caught the start a lot better now. Military numbers are still fairly close, but he is still floating 3,000 gold as opposed to his opponent being pretty much out of gold, although Viper has 56 Scorpions queued up. 56 Scorpions in the queue for the Snake. Nice move here from the Code, stopping this TC from being completed. The Code now takes over in Villager KD as he drops a dock at the back. He in fact is going to try and play 3 pawns here in an effort to secure some extra fishing eco. Viper also having his castle denied, and that results in somewhat underwhelming Vil count for Viper, although it's still better than Code's one, especially now that Code is losing a couple of Vils over here. Still, Viper now going for a monastery to get some relics picked up. Nice reaction from him saving that Vil to make sure it doesn't get annihilated by those Huskars. And now you are going to have 27 Scorpions for Viper. Viper actually adding fast fire ships over here, so does Code. Code actually wants to do 4 pawns. If Code actually gets 4 pawns here, he's going to be able to have an insane fish boom, and that's going to help quite a bit at maintaining the level of production that he needs in terms of food. Big scuffle in the middle, some onagers are joining the party as well, but Viper's got enough beef here to take this fight. And I have to say that this castle's going down here from the Code, an extremely important castle. Not a lot of meat shield in front for Viper though. And I have to say that this is what I was referring to when I talked about Code. That Code did a beautiful job sniping siege weapons when there was no defense for them. And this time he's also able to accomplish that. So Viper is just unable to preserve his Scorpion numbers here because he doesn't have the meat shield in front to help. He also had to work with a lot lower market prices, and I just feel more confidence in Code's gameplay here than I see for Viper. Code is gonna be able to stop Viper's castle here. He's probably gonna get a castle up here to secure this golden stone. He's already fishing on multiple pawns, including Viper's pawn. Viper will react with a tower to make sure that these ships will have a hard time surviving. And now that Code actually ran out of the gold that he initially got from selling resources, it will soon start becoming a factor of getting the eco up. 60 to 60 is the military count, population slightly better for Code, that mostly comes from his eco advantage. But 21 on gold versus 16 only, and look at this. Viper actually tries to stop this castle with a villager. This lady is just chasing the man. Let's see how Code reacts. Code could actually drag that lady here to the shoreline and just get a fast fire out. This fast fire could have killed the lady, but he's probably too occupied with something else. As I said, the fishing eco here is useless now that there is a tower that denies it. Viper still has a huge force of champions on the left side. Right side, we have a detachment as well coming in to get some damage done. Code's eco, however, seems to be a lot stronger than Viper's one. And as I said, Viper is unable to secure this ridge here with the castle, but Code will be able to. On the other hand, Code is going to lose this position here. I don't think that this castle goes up. And now it's going to be 1 gold and 1 stone in the hands of Viper there. And also Viper is able to deny this town center, so Viper's map presence is increasing more and more, so despite the fact that he's actually behind in score, he's increasing his map presence slow and steadily. He's at 49 champions and 6 bombard cannons. His opponent is mostly Scorpion, Onager, Huskar, but Viper with that many bombard cannons, he can just destroy those siege weapons so easily. But he's gotta be careful. Big misplay here by Viper. This is a huge misplay. He cannot afford to lose bombard cannons to Huskars like that. Oh man, that hurts so much for him. He still gets some value for those, and it looks like he will be able to save 4 of them, but that could have been a disaster. It's so expensive to lose. But look at Viper on the other side. He's coming into the food eco of the opponent, and we did mention that Gods is all about food eco at the beginning of the game because they're so food heavy. And the food eco is slightly safer for Viper over here, I would say, especially now that Code is losing quite a lot. Code has to divert a couple of Scorpions to deal with that, but Viper will intercept the villagers here on the forward, so that castle isn't actually going up either for... or is it? Like, these are still Imperial Age champions, so they should be able to get through houses relatively fast here. Viper can just knock this house down if he focuses that. He is focusing it, and indeed these villas are dead. Castle Foundation is now gone as well. Viper still is fighting on his own pond, but Viper secured the left-hand side pond, so he's gonna have some safe fishing eco here. Southern pond is in the hands of Code. Technically the eastern one as well, but that's actually not going to be a factor right now, because guess what? Code only has a couple of fishing ships on it. So now Viper is up to 4 bombard cannons. He saves this castle as well, secures this gold mine. 0 relics for both players. Somewhat uncharacteristic of these players. They usually go for the relics a lot earlier, so it's a bit of a surprise that we're not seeing that much of a relic collection from either of these players. Looks like the Code will launch an assault on the left side, which is going to be a fairly sizable one. Viper is actually sending his champions for sort of a raiding party type scenario, and also wants to launch an attack on the right side. First relic will be picked up here by the Code, but that's a very exposed monastery that he's placing it in. Viper will soon realize there's a big horde coming his way. Indeed, he now sees it, tries to go for a ground attack and will be successful doing so. Another ground attack in the middle of the group, and the third one could actually annihilate the forces of Code here. Oh my goodness. Look at these ground attacks from Viper. He just destroyed half of that army with just a couple of bombard cannons, and that's going to be enough for him to hold out with fewer amounts of swordsmen. And now the bombard cannons can push up and take down the Scorpions simultaneously. They're doing a nice job raiding Code's eco here. Code is still 57 on food, Viper is only at 38. So still I think Code is in a better spot, but the score now says otherwise, because Viper is pushing up in the middle, Scorpion versus Scorpion war, while the players are both distracted. Speaking of being distracted, Viper is going to lose his bombard cannons here on the far left. And as I said, this is still something that should massively favor the Code, because he's actually having a pretty nice push here, but this is good from Viper. Viper destroys the dock, and that means that these fishing ships will not be able to drop off food, and now they just feel like they have to commit a seppuku here, because it looks like they will just run into the swords of Viper's swordsmen. All those fishing ships are down, and suddenly Code's food eco is non-existent. A minute ago, he had 56, 59 food workers, including fishing ships and farmers. Now it's down to something like 20. And replenishing those infantry units will be insanely hard, if not impossible, when you don't have appropriate food income. Viper, however, is completely out of army. So it's a typical scenario where Viper has all the eco, and Code has all the army. The big book says that that usually is won by the player at this stage that has the bigger eco, because the bigger army also needs siege to push these castles, and it takes quite a lot of time, which allows Viper to reorganize his forces and once again take some engagements. Viper actually wants to drop a barracks here. He really wants to make sure that this dock is not gonna stay up long for the Code and prevent his opponent from just fishing on that pond. Still, Viper's army numbers are very underwhelming, especially if you account for the fact that some of that is fire ships. So he barely has, well, he's now up to 31 champions, and oh, that's not good for Viper. buying food is not going to be something that's sustainable. And that allows Code to sell some food himself if he's running out of gold. That may be a mistake from Viper. For now, let's just consider it an unnecessary evil, because Viper needs some food desperately and he knows that, so he needs to buy some food here. Champions coming in here for a red player Claude to clean this forward up. Viper is going to try and get some champions out, but this is going to be a cleanup here really fast. Viper, however, sniping the trap over here keeps the castle alive, and once again, many of those champions from Code will be annihilated, and that's way too many resources thrown out of the window. If you think about that, Viper with the quick walls against Gothic champions, that's not something that's gonna work well, because they would just melt buildings anyways. But as I said, many of those swordsmen are very weak, and I feel like Code is sort of throwing away a significant portion of his army here. We're gonna have most of those swordsmen being cleaned up, and now Viper takes over in army numbers, although the overall champion count is still better for our red player. Bombard cannons, however, taking down those expensive scorpions, and that's gonna hurt so much. And look at Viper. Look at Viper with the sneaky dog. He comes in with a couple of fire ships. It's all about crippling the opponent's food eco. Now, luckily for Code, he's got quite a lot of farming eco working for him, and he still controls the middle of the map, so it's not like he's running out of space anytime soon. Still, the fact that Viper now controls 4 pawns will mean that Viper could have a pretty untouched fish boom. Like, for example, this one, he can just drop fish traps, and that's not something that his opponent is going to be able to raid, basically ever, unless he takes down that castle, which is obviously not a big priority right now for the Code. Viper miscoordinating his bombard cannons a little bit here. He might need to do some quick walls to prevent those Huskars from overrunning the bombard cannons. He brings in his own Huskars. The villagers might need to repair those bombard cannons as well, because those are super expensive here. Overall, nice defense from Viper, but those 2 bombard cannons will go down. Right side, Viper is sending in more and more Huskars, so he wants to transition to more of a raiding scenario here, as opposed to direct push scenario. But once again, I feel like this game is just going to be a huge stalemate, because this is the moment where both players start to run out of resources, and from this point on, taking down these castles is going to be insanely hard. Viper has a 60 population lead, most of that comes from economy, but Viper is currently unable to get these castles taken down. However, he's able to influence the opponent's eco pretty heavily, and Code is at 79 villas only. Not a huge amount of them are currently on food. And while he is going to be able to clean up the Huskars from Viper, I feel like if Viper just keeps trickling in Huskars into the food eco of the opponent, he can swing the battle in his favor. And the same thing is apparently attempted by Viper here. Sends a couple of Huskars to deal with the villagers on this gold mine. He wasn't expecting the swordsman to show up though. So all these swordsmen will be able to clean up this forward most likely. In this one, the Skepdram is going to be very short-lived. And same can be said about these barracks and siege workshops. Viper now coming in with more Huskars though, and more importantly, while his opponent is distracted, he's going to push the middle with a huge amount of champions, and those 2 castles are the ones that are, I think, separating Viper from victory, because his population seems to be a lot better. If he can take down those 2 defensive castles, suddenly the base of Code is lying wide open for taking. 1 castle goes down, the monastery is all sudden. Look at Viper. Look at Viper. Immediately upon seeing his opponent having a forward monastery with relics, he yoinks both of them. And if this game goes into a very long stage, then we could look at this moment as the one that probably swings the battle heavily in the favor of Viper, because that's gonna be 5 relics for the snake. Look at the barracks walls from Viper as well. He wants to create sort of a wall in front of those traps, so the traps can finish off the castle. The champions are now gone for Viper. He's gonna mix in some Huskars, and once again he might be losing some of his siege weapons here, but the most important thing is that he stole 2 relics and he takes down 2 castles. So yes, it wasn't necessarily the most cost-efficient engagement ever, but it yielded a massive benefit for Viper, and Code knows that. It was 5-0 a year ago in Deathmatch World Cup 3. This became 6-3 in Deathmatch World Cup 4. The Viper becoming the champion of Deathmatch World Cup 4, sort of saving his title or keeping his title in this one. The first 4 games were very, very dominant, and I have to say that you could say that after game number 4, Viper actually slowed down, because the last 5 games, he lost 3 of them, and 2 of them were a little bit less convincing. Well, the Koreans game might have been, let's not talk about the Koreans game, because that was just a super, super quick win. It was just dragged out longer, but technically, that was a super convincing win from him with the Will Snipes. And this one, this is just about the timing and positioning. The way that he realized that, okay, my opponent has all the champions on the left side. This is the moment to strike the middle. He takes down the castles, he takes down the monastery, steals 2 relics, and I'm fairly certain that the 2 relics being lost for Code meant that he will have 0 chance of coming back into this one. He knows exactly. He's the one that match player that collects the relics most likely, other than Viper. So he knows exactly how important it is to keep your relics up, and he knows exactly how much advantage 5 relics will give a deathmatch player, especially in a game that seemed quite a bit of a stalemate. And with that, Viper saves his title and ends up being the victorious of Deathmatch World Cup 4.